might add, where you own property on Church Street, should you possibly recuse yourself? Be considered as not an abutter, but nearby? The state has no definition for nearby.
Let me open up, we're on, so let me open up the hearing
Sure.
first before we discuss that. Okay, planning board meeting is now open, August 15th, 2019. And the first thing we have on our agenda is a public hearing for Church Street rezoning amendment. So, Mr. Texera brought up a question if I should be recusing myself. I believe, and you can correct me, but Bob, is this a rezoning for the piece that was tried last year to be rezoned into B zone to do apartments on that horse farm down there?
Yeah, it's a citizen petition that we've seen before, and we couldn't vote on it at last town meeting because we forgot to do a public hearing. This is the public hearing to bring this forward for the next town meeting. So the selectmen asked to have this move forward for discussion here in a public hearing so that it can put on the warrant for the next town meeting.
Okay, well, just so everybody knows, I don't have anything to do with this piece of property on Church Street. I don't know the fella, I don't have any financial interest, and I won't need to recuse myself, so
Your call.
I will hand it over to Russ to read the notice.
In accordance with provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Raynham Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, August 15, 2019, 6 p.m. at Raynham Veterans Memorial Town Hall, 558 South Main Street, to consider the following amendment to the Town of Raynham zoning bylaws. Amend Section 3.2 zoning map by rezoning an area along Church Street from the current residential A district to residential B district. The proposed change extends from the northerly edge of the Taunton River southerly to the existing residential B zone, and the easterly boundary of the proposed change would be 400 feet from the easterly limit of Church Street. The change would be more compatible with current usage of Church Street area, where many multifamily residential buildings extend along the westerly side of Church Street, and eliminate the abrupt change from residential A to residential B. The dimensional requirements of the residential B zone will remain as currently designated, or take any action relative thereto. Any person wishing to be heard or interested in the proposed amendments should appear at the time and place designated. A complete copy of the zoning bylaws and proposed amendments may be viewed at Raynham Town Clerk's Office, 558 South Main Street during regular office hours. Raynham Planning Board, Dana Andrade, Chairman.
Thank you. As I'm saying, I don't have anything to do with it. Bob keeps flashing Raynham Riverwalk Adult Retirement Community, so everybody at home can see this, that I am, this is my project, so this is not what we're discussing at this particular moment.
Collapse it, Bob, that's all you have to do.
Apologize.
So he's just trying to, I see the grin on his face, he's just trying to get me in trouble.
And Mike's coming to the rescue.
No, there's faults. It's a false, building inspector's jumping the gun. Okay, we're all set? Oh, locked, nope, we don't have that. So, anybody here for the Church Street rezoning? This is the public hearing. This has been in front of us several times, at least 3 that I know of. This is the 3rd time, I believe. And it is across from King Philip Apartments? No. Church Street, what are those apartments? Church Street Apartments. From, I don't have anything in front of me, but from what I can remember, it was only a small piece. So maybe, Bob, you can fill us in.
I apologize for not having a map for you. We just got our new laptop, so we're going to spend a few weeks trying to figure out how to use it. But basically, we've discussed this a couple of times before. The southerly end of Church Street, where it goes into East Taunton, it's got two zones on each side of the street. On the right-hand side, heading towards East Taunton, is residential B. That's where you see the 8-unit apartment buildings. On the left-hand side, heading towards Taunton, before you get to the railroad bridge, it's residential A. The proposal is to change the left side from River Street all the way to the railroad bridge to residential B, which would allow multifamily housing along with single-family homes.
So this is different than the last time you did it, where it was just his one piece of property, wasn't it?
I don't believe it was ever the one piece of
No,
property.
it was always the whole.
It was always a strip
Okay,
on the
I stand
left-hand
corrected.
side heading towards Taunton before you get to the railroad bridge. So the citizen's petition, who was obviously brought in by the gentleman who lives at one of those locations on the left-hand side, was to change that side to mimic the other side to residential B, which would allow multifamily homes.
Now, my only concern, it was my concern last year, and it's still my concern, that there was only one, he had a petition signed, but there was no other abutting properties, no neighbors that actually signed his petition. None of them are coming forward, and for them to change just that one piece, I think we said it last time, it's kind of, how do we know? Well, I don't know if it would actually be spots on it where you have residential B now across the street. If across the street's B, there's all these apartments, I don't particularly myself have a problem with putting apartments here, but I wouldn't be in a position to say, you know, I'm gonna change your zoning for you when you're not even coming forward. I mean, you have 4 or 5 homes there.
They're all residential, single-family homes along there, aren't they? But
I haven't been at each individual one, but I would think there are a couple that are non-conforming and have more than one unit in them.
but they're non-conforming, as you said.
They're
When I
either,
went through the particular one, the first piece of property.
they're either
maybe last year
illegal,
or so.
they're either illegal or they're legal non-conforming. I don't have a count, but obviously the zoning change would solve some issues.
Where's the applicant?
I actually reached out to him, yesterday morning, to remind him we had a public hearing tonight. And he told me he was not going to attend.
I'd like him to give us a map and give us some pictures and tell us what it's all about.
Yeah, in this case, they basically, they submitted the petition, and then they just kind of dropped it on the selectman's lap, and here we are discussing it now.
I might be for it if, if the person cared enough to show up and tell us and the people at home what it's all about, but based on the applicant not being here for any meetings, I make a motion that we do not recommend approval to the town meeting.
I'll second that.
Second for discussion. In discussion, I guess, if all the neighbors did get together and did come in front of the board and discussed it as a group who was going to have their property rezoned, I think I would feel a lot better about it. And I agree. I don't, nobody in front of us, and with just one property owner trying to change other people's properties, I don't agree with that. So, motion was made, seconded for discussion. Any other discussion? Not to recommend. All in favor? Aye. Okay, Raynham Preserve East, 610. Okay, they're not here, so we're going to jump right ahead at 6:15. I figured they would run.
You were just enjoying it on the TV screen.
You were watching us on TV?
Yeah, it's outside hallway.
Where's our TV guy? I want a recorder. I want headphones, and I want to listen to what they're saying about us watching the other TV.
Speaking of which, you tell them to be.
Oh, I know, I forgot.
We have a different channel as the hallway video, so.
Oh, it's a different channel, so they're not watching us over there?
They're watching Wheel of Fortune right now. Jeopardy will be on any minute now.
All right, so while he's getting his drawings set up, I did miss saying that this was a recorded, tape recorded and video taped hearing. So all of you who are watching, obviously you know we're being recorded. Okay, so state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Evan Watson from Prime Engineering, representing the applicant. With me is Lee Castagnetti, counsel for
Do you have one of these?
Raynham Preserve LLC.
Do you have an extra one?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
So last we met, we presented a plan that showed 26 lots, which was a reduction from the previously presented 28 lots. We showed the grading and we showed the interrelationship between the houses, and we also had a stormwater basin that was a deep basin, so this is like a duck pond. So we've received some input from the board at the last meeting about the feeling that the houses, the interrelationship was a little close. So we've showed a different house on this plan before you. The house that I had on the other plan was a composite house, so it basically had any option available. This plan represents the most popular house that they have and is more representative of what would likely be out there. You can see that along the road, the houses are about 80 feet apart until you get into the cul-de-sac area where they approach 40 feet in between some of the houses. And then when we get back onto the road, they're spaced out more to 70, 80 feet apart. The other feature on this plan I wanted to show was, I haven't seen an actual letter output, but I've heard that Steve has talked to the DPW director and discussed what type of wet basin that they'd like to see. And instead of having a deep pool of water, they were more interested in the constructed stormwater wetland. So we've shown that here. Colored in blue is the stormwater forebay, and the rest of the basin is a constructed wetland. You'll also notice that at the entrance, we used to have another wet basin there, but that basin was relatively small and didn't do too much to actually mitigate the flow of stormwater. So we've eliminated that since it was really put there more for an aesthetic feature behind the mailbox. So I've removed that. We can basically discharge there with a storm scepter and a swale, and still the basin on the other side is large enough to reduce the rate of stormwater. So I'd be interested to hear what the board has to, any comment about the new relationship.
Now,
between the
you
buildings.
you didn't get a copy of Steve's letter?
No,
that he sent to the board?
So, Mr. Chairman, I only sent the memo to that email chain that you would distribute it, so I sent it to that group exclusively.
Okay.
To the board members, got it.
All right.
And I will say, but I did give a call to Evan just to sort of give him the highlights and say we were, the board was interested in. Oh, sorry. Hi, for the record, Steve Ventresca with Niche Engineering.
This is the one you gave me.
And so I'd spoken with Evan last week and given him highlights of the memo, explaining the board was interested in a constructed stormwater wetland, looking to incorporate more plants and more bird boxes or bat boxes or things that would sort of connect more with nature instead of just a deep bowl where we would collect stormwater. And also discussed what you had talked about before, where we're trying to keep a space between buildings or at least lot lines, and so we're not getting the mounding that is happening in other subdivisions in town. So it just gave a brief overview. I did speak with Mr. Castagnetti yesterday on site at Bassett Knoll, and also added some additional requests, I guess, about capturing runoff from roofs and capturing that first inch, either in underground chambers or bioretentions or something that would help control runoff from lots and getting onto the public way. So that was something that I'd mentioned to Mr. Castagnetti as well.
Mr. Chairman? With your permission, I had gotten copies of his memo. I had her print them up for me, and they're in my package, so I have a duplicate. With your permission, I'll give it to the young man.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was this picture.
It's the one from Steve,
Yeah.
with the pictures at the back and the whole 9 yards.
It's all public, that's fine. Because I know that meeting that we had to go over and discuss Mr. Buckley's concerns, and out of that meeting, I think he was acceptable to this layout.
Correct.
I think when we were finished with the meeting, he said, okay, it looks like this will, after you presented your information, it seems like if they do it according to this, he did say, and I'm not sure, I don't remember if it was in your letter, that he does, when that's built, he wants you on site to make sure that the construction of it is done properly.
Correct. It is in the memo, and I mentioned to Evan that we had talked about either having a landscape architect or a wetland scientist or both present while the construction was happening, and so that at particular stages, we could make sure that the construction and design was being implemented so that we get the proper attenuation of stormwater.
Now, also in that letter, you had mentioned, which was one of my comments I made in that meeting, was whether it be a landscape architect, somebody, and I'm not looking to spend more of your money, but all of the plants that are gonna be established in there have to be deer resistant, have to be something that's gonna eat mosquitoes. It's something, we talked about it a while ago, that this is gonna be the future of our cluster and I guess our wet basins, because it looks like if we approve this, we're going back to approving wet basins.
Yep.
And then, I just saw an article come out from Pennsylvania, Institution of Pennsylvania, some college, and everything that they're saying, the wet basins are gonna be coming back more and more. A lot of towns have gotten rid of them because there's an open pond, basically, and mosquito traps, but I think they've learned that it's not, dry basins are not filtering the rainwaters, runoff waters enough. It's getting more direct into the water table. So I think it's a positive for the town. I think it's a positive for, gives the applicants a little more leeway on projects that we can go inside the water table and not have 6-7 feet of fill coming in, which is, that's the land we're dealing with nowadays. We don't have sand gravel pits anymore that we're, we used to ride around as kids on dirt bikes. Now they're all, I call myself to say swamps.
They're more wet than what we've seen
I
in
have
the
a
past.
piece, so trust me, I know. So they're not swamps, but they're higher water table.
Yeah.
So a lower impact development is by far something I think we're gonna make sure going forward. The spacing between the houses, they look a lot better. Around the cul-de-sac, I was mentioning 20 feet to the property lines. We have 52 feet, 62 feet from the house to house. And around the cul-de-sacs, it looks like there's more than enough room, space-wise. The one thing that I did mention, and I think I put it in an email, because at the last meeting, I was enjoying a wedding in New York, and I sent an email to the board members, just saying, my thoughts on going forward. Minimum 20-foot spacing from property lines, and also top grade no more than 60 inches higher than the road. Now, this isn't anything spelled, that's etched in concrete. I think the further distance from the property line is gonna be more beneficial. We were talking at the meeting that I was here, that, maybe we do it where the water table is, and, like I mentioned in my email, was Bob regulates the 2 feet above the water table. And I'm just not sure that, going by the water table would be the right thing, so I think I mentioned, I'm looking for some assistance on, I don't want to put something in the regs that is not going to work, because we're in the process of redoing our, we'll be redoing our regs. I think we've done that in the past, so hopefully we don't do it in the future. And so 60 inches, is that grading around these houses? What do you have, I see you have grade lines, but I don't see any numbers.
Yeah, I didn't have.
Oh, yeah,
There's a few numbers on there.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Each line is 1 foot in elevation, so. It is the case sometimes, since the lawn actually slopes from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. If we had, and I've seen that condition in other regulations in the past, the subdivision regulations, and they seem to have disappeared. It was a popular thing to have that you had to have either a minimum height above the road, which was more popular, which then meant that people had to fill up their whole lots, or a maximum. So if we did that, like for instance for these lots, there's a small valley here, but it's also higher.
Which again, and I put that in my email, that would be, obviously, if the land is already higher than the road, it's going to be kind of, that would almost be excused. If the starting elevation of property is already higher than your road, the main thing is not bringing in 7 feet of fill. That's our goal. I think that's what our goal should be, not bringing in all of the.
That was your point.
Right, bringing in all the fill. If we have a nice hill, build on the hill. I don't care if it's 10 feet higher than the road. Yes, Bob?
Yeah, most engineers will tell you the top of foundation elevations are always based on the water table. So they find the water table, then they work backwards from there. Typically, we like to have a 2-foot separation to the basement floor from water table to eliminate wet basements. But if you do some kind of permanent draining, which Longbuilt does do, some kind of future prep in case there is water, that 2 foot gets reduced to about a foot and a half. So it's tough to set a minimum height or maximum height without knowing exactly where your water table is.
So again, like I mentioned when I first started talking, it's not something that we have written down. It's something that we're going to be working on. So I guess, this project, obviously, we're going to be looking at this particular plan and your elevations and your grades and not a bylaw that we have in place.
I will say, that was considered the elevation of the houses. So when we.
Thought I was getting hollowed out.
No.
No.
When we sited these homes on the high side of the road, we pushed them down into the water table as much as we could, and we're presenting a house what we call a daylight, so it's actually into the ground in the back a little bit with windows across the back, and you'd walk up a couple stairs. On the low side of the property, we did set the houses at the existing grade, so it would be walkout on that side. So on the high side of the road, we didn't try and push the houses up so high as to get walkouts in the back either. It was kind of the fine line as to push them down enough to not have them tower over the road, but keep them up out of the water table as well. And then where we could, some areas we push them down a little bit, and we'll have to have an actual foundation drain on some of these areas over here. But the grade is good enough on the lot that we can do that without a problem.
All right, so let's take parcel 7, just for one, that I can see the grading in the back. It says 98. So existing grade's 98. And road is 98. So how is that higher? Because the top of foundation is, say, 105. So that's 7-foot difference from top of foundation to the road. And I'm sure you're going to have a couple of feet of foundations showing, so it's 5 feet of grading. So 7 feet above the road, but it looks like your existing grade is at 98, so I'm not sure how that one falls into what you were just explaining about being on a hill. Did you see parcel 7?
thinking the label might be incorrect, but the grading shows the garage at about 102. And then the top of the foundation would be 3 feet higher than that, so about 105. Yep, okay.
So that's quite a ways up.
I'll show this thing, most of them.
So again, that's, that's my concern. Am I seeing that? Is that 98? At least that's what it's showing. I don't know if it's, I know this isn't an actual,
I was gonna point out the same thing, parcel 7 and 6 seem to be that mounding that we were trying to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about one thing, but the plan is, so I think we have to get kind of specific on the grading of, in the elevations of, you satisfied the distance between the houses? I thought, I'm satisfied with the way that looks, myself personally. The other guys can speak for themselves, but I think the layout looks good. The detention area, the basin is something that's gonna be, you're gonna work with Steve to get that fine-tuned, so we make sure it's exactly what we want. So still, my issue, my concern is the grading. So I think that's something that needs to be.
Wonder if it's helpful to put estimated groundwater elevations, for a general idea, so we can start to look at it from that
And then,
point, which I think
then
makes
it goes
sense.
with exactly with what Bob says,
Yeah.
then we're going from it. And, again, I don't want to tell you that you can't build on a house lot in a subdivision because the groundwater is, 2 feet lower or 2 feet below the grade, and that doesn't fit within, what I'm thinking of 60 inches higher than the road. Because again, 60 inches, I'm saying 5 feet of material coming in, your foundation, you got at least 2 feet of foundation, so you got 7 feet. So, that's quite a bit. And I think when we get over that, I think that's when we start getting these, big elevation differences between one yard to the next. So, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can look at it a little more closely. Again, this was really presented as a
Yeah, no, I understand,
schematic
but
overall and not,
I just want to
add
give,
each
I just
individual
want to make
lot
sure you
approved.
understand what I'm saying, so
Yep.
you can kind of work on that with Steve going forward. The only other issue that we discussed with Ed was the pavement on Bayberry, correct? That's Bayberry, right?
yeah, that's Bayberry Road.
To continue the pavement over there. And, I did mention to Ed not to, we're not going in and rebuilding the entire subdivision. We're going in to repave it so it can be accepted at the town, because none of those roads, we found out, are accepted. Ed asked about doing sidewalks, and I said, you're the one that's gonna make the final decision. If the sidewalks, if we're not grinding it, and that's gonna interfere with the sidewalks, then, is it worth grinding it and not doing sidewalks? Is it worth chip sealing and doing the sidewalks? I don't know. It's not up to, it's not up to me to figure that out. You guys can figure that out with Ed. It just has to get done. So,
Are you talking about the existing sidewalks on Bayberry or the
Yes,
proposed
not
sidewalks?
yours.
Okay.
I'm talking about Bayberry coming into your subdivision. Because I did mention to you last time that I wouldn't be looking for full build-out of the road. I wouldn't put that cost on you because it's, but it needs to be done or else this won't get approved. This won't get accepted as a public way. Because the other one's not accepted as a public way. So that has to get done. So you'll have to work with Ed on that, with Steve, and see what works. John, any questions? Anything else before I go to Burke? You have any questions for Steve? No. Russ? No. What else do you have? Do you have anything else? Have you reviewed anything else that's we're gonna have to get, you're gonna be here at every
I know.
meeting, so we're gonna get you a
me a chair
microphone,
and a
so you don't,
microphone.
yeah, so,
And I'm happy to stand here for the rest of the night. And so I've not received anything, any new plans or anything, and this is the first revision, I guess, at this point.
I
So-
just, all right, so, I just wanna make sure that they have, now they do have the letter that you presented to the board out of that meeting that the three of us had. Bob, do you have anything to add to, you're satisfied, any, so, I guess, questions, anybody have questions? Lee?
Not directly related to that, but
Okay,
kind of a byproduct of that.
okay, yeah, go ahead, get,
Lee Castagnetti from Long-Built Homes. When we were at Raynham Preserve the other day, doing the sidewalks, Steve and I talked about, with the elimination of a sidewalk, there is the waiver, the right-of-way still accounts for the sidewalk that, would have been built, including the grass strip. The plan calls for the street trees to be outside of the right-of-way. So at this juncture, you're going to put the street trees about 13 to 15 feet off the street, which is kind of, I'm not asking not to do the trees, I'm just suggesting not to do the trees where we're currently going to have to do them, because it's not going to appear to be a street tree. So they really would be better suited to being in the right-of-way. But the reason I'm mentioning that is specifically as it relates to this, that if the board is considering or contemplating a willingness to waive the, one of the sidewalks, that we might want to consider altering the width of the right-of-way so that the street trees can be on private property, not in the right-of-way, and yet still appear to be street trees and be closer to the street than where they're going to have to be at in Raynham Preserve.
On this plan. Is that correct? That's how you've shown them on this plan?
Well, I think they were just done randomly to be illustrative on the
They
plan.
appear to
I
be
don't
on
think
the
it was.
property versus-
Yeah,
These are on private property outside.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's something, I guess we can discuss, it's, is there anything that is installed inside of that layout that you want to be outside of the layout? But any utilities, anything, is there anything in there? Because the subdivision is all built, so now obviously you can't go start digging a tree and also hit an electrical line or hit something.
yeah, the electric service is there,
Okay, so is that gonna?
is on that side.
So are we gonna be able to reduce, it seems like you're asking, you're gonna come back in front of us, if it's all right with us, to ask to move those trees closer to the road. Is that what I'm getting at, or are you just?
Well, I personally think aesthetically, it would be a better placement for the trees, consistent with what they're supposed to be as street trees, not a tree in, as an ornamental tree in somebody's yard.
Right, all right, so, two different things.
Yeah.
If that's the case on here, I guess we could look at having a smaller layout instead of
Yeah.
50 feet.
That's,
Because if you start off with a 40-foot layout, that's your layout. You're not gonna be putting utilities or anything else in it. So, I don't, personally, that's, the layout to me, when we're doing smaller roads these days,
Yeah,
doesn't make sense, having a large layout, because people
Right.
run their sprinkler systems over there, and
exactly.
before you know it, where
Yeah.
the town's plowing, front end loader's ripping up something, and then it's our problem. So that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
What I guess now, over there, we have a 50-foot layout.
Mhm.
If we let you move the trees closer to the road, are we gonna be creating a problem? One, if that tree is inside that layout, then we own it. Soon as that road gets accepted, then the town owns it. I don't think the town's gonna wanna be dealing with owning trees. Myself, and, I know, in the past, that's just been because if the tree dies, winter storm, you're plowing or, so over there, how far off are they, 13, they're
Yeah, it's
13
about
feet?
13 feet.
Well-
12 to 13 feet.
All right, Steve, question for you. You were over there and you saw what Lee's talking about?
I was, yeah, and Lee's correct that it would be basically, within the middle of the lawns and, getting close to the driveway, and then as those trees mature, then we start to get into, hazards with falling on houses and other property. We also discussed maybe doing an easement, and I don't know if that's something the board is interested in doing an easement within the layout where the trees are in an easement that's where you're allowed to plant trees, but it's not owned by the trees are not maintained by the town, and that gets messy. So
That's just weird. It's a cluster development.
Yeah.
It's already special permitted. If we start doing easements on a subdivision that big, I just see,
that's what I
I
figured.
just
but
see being, down the road being a nightmare.
nightmare. Yeah.
They're gonna go to a closing and say, what's this easement for? That would be,
We also discussed ornamental trees or something that might not be as big, maybe as an oak or, something that would mature into a larger sized tree. Maybe that's something to consider.
comments about questions, I don't know.
Our
Anybody
our
have-
land- our landscapers discussed that with Brian Glavin, your tree warden, and he's amenable. Matter of fact, not amenable, he's actually in favor of doing more ornamentals. In the areas there's some areas in the side yards, that are larger areas, but in the side yards that we can do street trees, because they won't be intrusive to the houses. But he agreed that being closer to the houses and that the ornamental trees would be appropriate.
I like all the trees to be consistent, to have some not, some, because it's, 10, 15 years, 20 years from now, it's gonna look silly if they're all different. It's beautiful when they're all grown.
But we never do the same tree. We always do a mix of trees. You don't want to do all the same trees. If you ever have a blight, it'll wipe out the entire subdivision.
Yeah, but
You
they're
only-
not an ornamental tree, a weeping cherry or something, and then all of a sudden you have an oak
No,
across
it'll
the
be-
street.
It'd be a mix of 4 to 5 species. That's it.
Well, again, it's up, present something, if, what you're thinking, and I took a ride through there the other day when they were working on the sidewalks, and, the sidewalks, all the curbing looked good, the front mailbox area looks good, so you're getting there, and it's,
Oh, come on, the front area looks great.
front area looks
Not just
great.
good.
I like
All right.
I like the mailbox. As soon as I drove by it, an image of Nick just flashed in front of me because he argued like heck on that mailbox.
I wish you hadn't said that.
I'm sorry,
I hate
but
to bring that up.
I do. I actually do. But anyway, because he argued about it, and I just think it makes so much sense. So nice. But no, the entrance looks great. I saw on the other entrance, you're doing the stone
Yeah.
preserve. That looks nice. That telephone pole's something that somebody's got to work on because that thing is right in the way. So the trees, Rick, you have any comments about trees?
I don't. Complicated issue, pros and cons.
You've been around enough subdivisions, what are they doing now, Plymouth and Kingston and? I
They
know
put
every-
them in, but I know there's been sidewalks sometime. But you do get into that, if you have too much road width. We've had it where actually people moved in, installed their sprinklers, and when they went back to put in the street trees,
Oh, yeah.
they're digging up people's sprinklers.
King
and it's
Estates,
like,
we had that problem.
You wrecked my sprinkler. It's like, your sprinkler's in my road.
We do it all the time. It's, we moved about 50 sprinkler heads
Yeah.
when we did the, we've come to accept it. It's just
Yeah.
a curse that we have to live with.
Yeah.
So I guess, Steve, you figure it out, come up with something with Bob. Bob, you have any, I know, it's one of those things. I just don't want, I don't think the town should be responsible for the tree. I guess, so if we start from there, then I wouldn't put it in the layout going forward. If we have no sidewalk, if we're waiving the sidewalk, maybe that should be one of the, right off the beginning of a subdivision. We should look at the size of the subdivision and say, okay, the subdivision qualifies for a 40-foot layout instead of a 50.
On the other hand, when North Main Street got rebuilt however many years ago, they put trees all over the place.
And it looks like heck. they got a tree here, and they got I got a 200-year-old tree here, and they got this foolish thing here that is either dead or the people ripped them out.
I took the trees, dug them up, and put them someplace that
Oh,
makes sense.
see, I should have let you finish, you dug them up. No, I know, it's ridiculous, you know.
You did that at night, I assume.
They just did them, they just put them anywhere, and it looks ridiculous when it's not done right, so that's what I want to avoid.
And that's part of my concern, that it's going to be on private property, and then if they're not placed well and they're too close, they end up being too, closer to a house than they should be because of that offset for the excessive width of the right-of-way. Then eventually down the road, as the tree gets larger, somebody just looks at it and says, I'm not going to keep this tree in my front yard blocking my house, and they take it down anyway, so it just.
Yeah, I know.
Catch-22, but just.
It's one of those,
that's why I'm-
I don't think we have the answers. It's,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that, I don't know. I think it's something to work on, and you come to us. Anybody have any ideas? Mr. Bamilla, you're in subdivisions all the time. You're either biting your knuckles because you hate what we're saying, or you don't want us to see you laughing back there, talking about these street trees. We all know it's a pain in the neck, but,
No arborists in the ground.
Make the layout smaller,
yeah,
make the room.
from the beginning, so we don't, yeah.
That's
So-
like I said, so if if you are contemplating, at least here, eliminating the sidewalk, then we should consider a narrower layout, so it is on the private property, but not as far off the street to make it still
Well, the
appear to be a
plans,
street tree.
You're in front of us for a cluster development. I think we've come to a point where this cluster development hasn't been accepted, this layout, I
Mhm.
believe, correct? So, if the rest of the members of the board don't mind, I think we're far enough along, we can approve the cluster development, or approve accepting, allowing the cluster development and the number of lots, and have the discussion of the sidewalk on one side. I think, I don't think we're gonna say no. We're gonna stop this, from having sidewalks on one side when we don't do them elsewhere. So then they can do their final plans, showing the trees where they should be.
Right.
And that's something, again, I hope you're taking notes, because that's gonna go in our regs. All these things, and, thanks for bringing that up over there, because it's something that, when we used to have 32-foot layouts,
Yeah.
or 32-foot of pavement between the
Yeah.
pavement and sidewalks, 50 feet was needed.
Yeah, every inch of it.
Now, it's like, holy cow, the town owns way the heck over there.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, are you guys open to, you want to give them an opinion on the sidewalks? You want to vote on the cluster, just allowing the cluster so they can keep moving forward with the cluster development?
Well, I agree with the cluster, I agree with the number of lots, if Law and Build agrees with doing the pavement work.
Well, I think that's in our certificate of action. That's going to be something
Yeah.
that he has no choice agreeing. He has to do it, or else he's not going to, it's going to be part of the project. And that's going to be that'll be in the special permit.
Okay. And I don't have a problem with the 40-foot layout, and, put the trees where it makes sense to put them and where they won't hit the utilities.
Do you agree with that, Russ?
I'm good with the layout.
So why don't we, at this point, until we get a little more clarity on the pavement with Ed, why don't we just say, we're gonna waive the sidewalk on one side? So when you come back, why don't you plan on 40-foot layout? So the trees can be in the right spot?
And in conjunction with that, I know you're right, this is not what your regulations currently call for, but based on, what we most recently did in Raynham Preserve, that we would show the Cape Cod berm on the non-sidewalk side and
Correct.
the vertical granite curve.
Correct.
Exactly what we've just done out there.
Right, even though our regs don't show
Right.
that,
Right.
we did a modification over
Gravitated
there
toward that, yeah.
with Ed's guidance from Highway Superintendent. So again, that will be going into our new regs, so. Yep, so all in favor of, we're only dealing with, sidewalks right now, so all in favor of the sidewalks on one side in a 40-foot layout? Aye. Motion was made and seconded
Seconded along the way.
along the way, and all in favor, aye. All right, so that's, so we can at least, like I told you, probably 2 months ago, this is gonna be the,
Yeah.
the, future of cluster developments, hopefully. Hopefully we do it right.
Are we approving the special permit?
No, we're just doing this, we're just letting them do the sidewalks, so when they come back in front of us
40-foot.
in a 40-foot layout. All
This
right.
was design criteria, just so we know.
Right,
what-
just so they
what
can
direction to go in and
keep
not have
moving.
to-
Anything to add to that, Steve?
Yeah, I would just say that during our discussion with Ed, Ed had talked about doing easements or something at the end of the cul-de-sacs where you could pile snow on top of it, so just something to be aware of as you redo the layout design. And I think one of the talking points was making it some type of stone where they could put the snow, and then in the summer, cars could park there, for
Right.
1 or 2 spaces, something like that.
Because what I mentioned to Ed when he did bring that up was if you have lots that are, are hilly, you put rocks around, some stones, and then where the easement area, where the snow's gonna go, you just put stone there. I took a ride by Orchard Ave, and I think those two houses look, to me, they look awesome there. I think the whole setting looks nice,
Yeah, we were very pleased with how.
the
it's
heights,
going.
where that stone is, where the snow's gonna go. The only thing I didn't see, and I mentioned it I think I mentioned it to Bob and mentioned it to Steve, I didn't see the granite posts that had to be placed. And if you look at the certificate of action, it should be on there that we asked for granite posts with, and I think the granite post was a sign, snow, look at the certificate of action, it's just to see, but I think there was something about the granite posts, should be on the certificate of action. And I think it was even spelled out to be on the property line. So we know the limit of the town's, property. But if you look that up, I know it was on the certificate of action, so you'll see that. Just so when he goes out there, you're not delayed over there too. Anything else?
No.
Bob? All right, so,
Can you just give the board an update on Barcelona?
Sure. Yep. What we call Phase 1, the first 20 lots on the northerly side of Goldfinch, before you reach the intersection of Sparrow. The patch for the pavement, in order to accept the Cape Cod berm on that side, which was not originally contemplated, so the road was too narrow, has been completed, and the granite curbing, the vertical granite curbing has been installed on the other side. The sidewalks were installed. Was that yesterday or Yeah, yesterday, and the finished course pavement is slated to be installed the next Friday. And they are already working on Sparrow Way. They're raising the structures. The area for that expanded width of the road has already been, that was done in conjunction. They were both done at the same time. So that patch pavement will be done after the granite curb goes in as well. Same protocol. The sidewalk will go in immediately after the curbing is in, and that paving will be done this fall. So the both Sparrow Way and the and Goldfinch to the intersection will be completed. Sparrow Way, by the end of the week next week. I'm sorry, Goldfinch and then Sparrow Way.
how about the grading and landscaping from the pump station on wherever the pump station is, Ramshead?
Yeah,
Paddock. Pump station at the end of Paddock. That crossing that goes from there all the way to the back of,
Mhm.
that had to get landscaped.
We've
that-
got to
Okay.
get out there and clean
All right.
that up. And
So weather's
Yeah.
coming up, better
Yeah.
weather's next month or so
Yeah.
you're getting to the point where, that should be done and completed,
Yeah.
the road, so, just so
Yeah.
we don't have delays when you're looking to have the first phase accepted, or, all right?
Yep.
The other, while we're talking about Bassano, we are we signed a bill for $900 and we're down to $1,500. So if we can ask Mrs. Claire Harris to fund us another,
We've asked for 7,500.
oh, that one that's the,
We haven't received it yet.
oh, we asked for that a couple months ago.
The last, two meetings ago, you asked for that.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, so
I'll get it taken care of.
can you,
Absolutely.
now, she had called the office and was questioning a $25,000 snowplow that the town was asking for, and I checked with Ed, and there's nothing, we're not asking for any, to increase the snowplow count, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's in your decision.
Oh, was it in the?
It's $1,000 per lot at each closing. You've got 45,000 right now.
Almost 45.
Right, no, I understand that, but an additional 25,000 we're looking for?
It's $1,000 per lot as the phases are closed.
Okay, so then I misunderstood, so it's the new phase.
So it's 70,000 in total, in
It's the new
escrow.
section, not the old section?
Correct.
Okay, I thought it
Correct.
was, I thought she was
So when we
asking.
close on the additional 25 lots for Phase 3,
Right,
we'll-
that's on that.
another 25,000
Okay,
in
well,
escrow.
I
correct.
don't even know houses in there, so I'm not even, I wasn't even looking over there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, other than that, we can continue Raynham Preserve until September 5th at Cumberland Farms, let's say 6:20. Just so you don't miss anything. Okay? 6:20 on September 5th. So I think, I think you've got some good direction. So hopefully we can be almost done. All right.
Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. And longer waiting, public hearing. I think we have a public hearing notice to read.
I think that was done last week.
Oh, okay, you opened up the hearing last week. So a continued public hearing for ATG Land Holdings Paramount Drive Site Plan. If you can, Mr. Gallagher is entering the room.
Did we open that last time we met? Yeah.
That was the meeting, we just opened everything.
I watched the last meeting and I thought I.
We opened it last.
Opened it, took
We
no
opened
evidence,
it.
and continued to tonight.
Okay, so, this is a continuance of the public hearing. You know the drill, state your name for the record, and anybody else that's going to be speaking, do you have any experts with you?
I have Mr. Ken Conti from Beals and Thomas, civil engineer, will probably have some input. Steve Giles from ATG Land Holdings LLC, property owner, may or may not have something to say, but that would be it.
He
Just
always
myself.
has something to say.
No, I've had him sit quietly for a few meetings.
All right, Maureen, you got all that?
I got it all.
Okay, very good.
So my name is Ed Brennan. I'm an attorney with an office at 1 Church Green in Taunton. I represent the applicant, AGG Land Holdings, Inc. I think, well, as we noted a moment ago, we were before the board at the last meeting. We read the public notice into the record, opened, and then continued to tonight due to the quorum issue. So this is a project that the board's quite familiar with, that we worked on for a long time across the street, Innovation Park. That wasn't working out very well, so my client found this piece of property in Paramount Park, Lot 22. It's a 15-acre parcel. It's part of Paramount Park, which is a designated development district that was approved by the town in the late 80s as part of a master plan, so to speak, for that parcel of land. The proposal is to construct a 28,500 square foot building that will be used for a distribution center for truck parts. It will be used for sales of new trucks, and it will be used for maintenance and repair and warranty work on trucks through service bays. The property is actually has a split zone. The rear part of it is business district. The front part of it is designated development district. The business district is not accessible from any other area other than through the designated development district. It's always been part of this lot. The uses that we propose, the way we situated them on the lot, the uses in the business district are allowed in the business district, and the uses in the designated district allowed in the designated development district. So we don't have any use variance issues. The lot size, frontage, area, setbacks, uplands, all meet the requirements of your zoning bylaw. So we're not asking for any variances or waivers in that regard. We meet the parking, we exceed the parking that's required. We have 148 spaces, 131 are required. The real center of the business on this site is the parts distribution center, where they have a warehouse with the parts in it, and they have a fleet of small vans that distribute them out, parts throughout southeastern Massachusetts. They will have new sales there. They average on their other sites, they have 4 or 5 other sites, they average about 4 to 5 new vehicles on the site for display. That's all they have. Unlike a car dealership, when someone's looking for a new tractor, they're not driving around on a Sunday afternoon and checking it out. 90% of the work is done on the internet, the telephone, then a customer will come and look at a truck, and then it will get closed. Most of the activity will be on the sales, will still be at the Shrewsbury office. You may have one salesman down here and a small sales office. But this isn't a major sales facility. The hub of the sales will remain in Shrewsbury. So you'll have the distribution will be the major activity, and then you'll have truck maintenance, repairs, and warranty work on the back side of the building. Pretty much all of the easterly part of this site is the wetlands, so the westerly part, where we come in off Paramount Drive, is where the improvements will be. There'll be obviously a curb cut coming in. There's an access road now that goes to the Miller's business on Hill Street. That will remain in place for the same purpose that it's in place now. So there'll be no changes in that regard. I believe that was put in for the benefit of the Hill Street neighbors that would deflect some of the truck traffic off of Hill Street and through Paramount Park. So that concept is being maintained on the development of this site. So we think we meet, there are some waivers we're asking. At some point in time, we have a list of waivers that were in the submission that we could talk about when it's appropriate for the board. But as far as the development of the site, it's part of the master. This lot was considered on the master development plan for Paramount Park. So drainage, truck traffic, all of that has already been factored into the overall layout of the plan. Lot 22 was one of the original lots in the subdivision. All the maintenance, warranty work on the trucks is done inside the building, on the back side where the bays are shown. None of the work takes place on the outside. There's no storage of trailers on this site. The trailers will not be stored there. Someone comes in with a cab, they're going to have to find alternate storage and just bring their cab to this site for work. So that there will be no spare part trucks or used trucks or parts, junk trucks on the site. They do the work, they use new parts, they don't have any used part vehicles on the site. So I think the operation fits into the park. In February, I met with the lot owners at their annual meeting and the Board of Trustees. I reviewed these plans with them at that time, and they sent a letter to the board, which should be in the file, saying that they had no objection to it. They wanted to weigh in on some landscaping plans, which we said we would be happy to accommodate them in that regard. But as far as the use and the proposal, they had no objections to it. So I think we've addressed the neighbors. There are many other businesses in there, FedEx and a few others that have 24/7 truck traffic there, certainly of a much higher volume that we'll have on this site, because the trucks aren't coming in and off the site with cargo. They're not picking up and dropping off. The truck traffic is for the maintenance, repair, and warranty work. So unlike some of the other businesses in the park, the volume won't be the same, because we're not bringing goods in and out of the park. We also propose
The Hill Street and the easement, what's that all about?
Apparently, in the past, the Millers had agreed to use a portion of this lot to access.
Can we, you have a laser pointer?
And maybe Peter, you want to weigh in on that? Because you know the history better than I do, but
Well, wait a minute.
at the right time.
If you weigh in, please stand up and you have to talk at the microphone.
Well, let me see if I can address it first. I got a
And why
decent
don't you
handle
take the laser pointer and you can,
Is that the access onto Hill Street?
Goes from the Millers property into the park.
That was the old Borges property?
No.
The other one, no?
let's not get confused,
Oh, yeah, let's not-
some know where it is, some don't know where it is. If you, does that TV,
Let me just
is
state
that?
my name, Peter
Is that
Bamillo.
TV on, are you picking up that TV or that one? Either one? Okay,
Did you say either one or neither one?
no, either one.
Use that one so you guys smell and see what's in.
Okay, so your laser pointer, please.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, you can
Yeah.
put it on your computer.
Okay, there's,
Maybe not.
presently,
Can you?
there's an access from the Millers property across this property out to Paramount Park.
No. Okay. No, Mr. Brennan, you can keep going. We're just,
Can't hear you.
yeah, speak.
I'm used to
Speak-
using an easel. Now I
Yeah.
have PowerPoint,
Hey, you
lasers,
know,
microphones.
this is all new to all of us, so you want to, we can all go home right now if you'd like. And we
Okay.
can,
Right there, I'm using this laser. That's an access that comes from the Miller property onto this property. And it may be relocated slightly, but it's being used now at certain times to direct truck traffic away from Hill Street into the park. And that was an agreement that I believe the Millers entered into with neighbors some time ago.
What's the Miller Hill Street property used for?
My construction company.
Okay, so you have the right to drive up and down Hill Street, and so you have a deal with the neighbors where you will
you have to
use
get up, Mr. Miller.
Paramount
and speak to the
Drive.
microphone.
Okay, Bob, you do get it.
Probably a couple of years ago, the mills were working on the highway. They were taking in grindings. The work was done at night. The truck traffic had to, in order for them to access their site in their yard, they had to access their yard through residential neighborhoods. They actually, I fielded a lot of complaints from truck traffic late at night. So I brought it to their attention, and they actually came up with a solution to cut through the park and to make this access way to the back of their property to eliminate their trucks driving through residential neighborhoods and waking people up late at night. So it serves a purpose that, you know, for a problem that we had, and they solved that problem by having this access way.
What's the zoning on Hill Street?
Hill Street's residential A.
Is there any problem with bringing trucks from, well, I guess we're not bringing trucks from Paramount to Hill Street. We're only bringing them from Hill Street to Paramount.
They're in a business zone where they are on Hill Street, so they're cutting across the business part
Okay.
through Paramount Drive, so they're not accessing any roadway where they'd have to navigate in front
I
of
think
residential.
Bert was wondering what their property was zoned for. A lot of Hill Streets, a lot of, the opposite side of Hill Street is residential A. Their
Right.
side is business?
There is business.
Okay, so they're in a business zone.
Okay, so there's no issues there.
No, they have access, they have the correct,
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
yes, thank you.
okay, very good, so,
Okay, so with that said, I mean, the site plan is not really complicated. The matter had been sent out to Nitch, and Steve had responded with a letter, and we've responded to that letter, I believe, on August 8th. My reading of the letter, and Steve can weigh in if you'd like, there are no serious issues at all. We're asking for a couple of waivers that address some of the questions that he raised, but I think the August 8th response letter from Beals and Thomas addresses the engineering issues raised by Nitch, Steve at Nitch. So I don't see any engineering obstacles in front of us at all.
Okay.
Steve, you can.
So, why don't you get up there, Steve? We have your initial review letter, and then we've received, did you get a copy of their responses from your review letter?
I'll be honest, I did not see this review letter. That doesn't mean I didn't receive it.
Okay.
I did look today through my email, and I did not see the response.
Okay, so this was August 8th.
August 8th. Today's the 16, 15?
It was the 15.
So, I went through it all, and again, like Mr. Brennan says, it looks like they have quite a few, no response. I think the two of yous can work on your review letter.
Yeah, sorry, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the biggest, the two bigger items, which the first one was the access through to Hill Street is being discussed, and then the drainage portion where I think the bottom of, I think it's Basin 1, was closer to groundwater, didn't have that 2-foot separation. I think it was a little bit closer, so interested to see how they resolve that. And then the waivers asking for work within 25 feet of the wetland or the wetland delineation. And so asked if they could pull that away. From the brief look through this letter, it doesn't sound like they were able to do it, and so I don't know if asking them to do additional planting mitigation, on
Well, that's
that
gonna be
side,
something
that's
that they're gonna have to get through conservation with anyway.
Exactly.
So I think we can let conservation deal with that one. And the plantings, I see that they're looking, one of the waivers is to eliminate the parking lot trees, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Can you go back to the parking lot? Yeah, showing all the spaces. Yeah. How wide is that section from Paramount Drive Road? See that? From the road to the building, it looks,
And here's a laser, hit the top button, it's a laser.
This distance?
no, see
He's got
this distance right here? Is there places for, this looks like is this grass area?
Yeah, I might be able to help you on that. We've had the architect do a rendering initially with the plantings and how they may mature. So I think this is the view from the street that might be of assistance.
Yeah, you guys can look at that one.
So this is the grass.
Yeah, yeah. So you do show, do you have a landscape plan on there? Maybe, Bob, maybe you can go to the landscape plan if you can find that. Sometimes we get these beautiful renderings, and then when they show up, they say, oh, that was just a picture. So if that's the picture, it looks beautiful. I'm sure, did you present these pictures to the park owners when
They
you?
got the whole package.
So
They got the revised package.
Oh, these were two different pictures.
That was one in
You
July.
didn't see, this is the other one that we didn't. So it's pretty concealed with all the trees, and you can see the building, obviously, and. Are those Range Rovers parked in the front? I don't know. You guys drive Range Rovers? Looks like there's a few white Range Rovers on the plan. All right, well, the pictures look nice, and you have plantings, so there's your planting scheme. You're looking for a waiver for, you look like you have a lot of plantings on the islands. What are you looking for a waiver for? Maybe you can help out with that one?
Yeah, it's the size. We went down the caliper, the size
Oh.
of the tree from 4, I believe, to 2 and 2.5.
Yeah, we've gone through those before, and, yeah, that's, gonna be one of our modifications. A 4-inch tree size is like, you need a mini hoist. Put them up, pick them up, and
Would it be time to look at the waivers?
We can run through them.
They're not voluminous.
It's, yeah, it wasn't a,
It's just to make it easier to copy that page.
I'll read them out quickly. The applicant's requesting a waiver for the project, section 4.7, site plan content. Plans shall be to scale 120 or 140. Section 5.1.2, a 3-foot wide landscape strip shall be provided along foundation walls. That one there, we've always, if we've given a waiver on them, it's been because the building has a concrete structure, whether it's a 3-foot wall, but if there is any glass, or if there's parking against walkways, we have to have bollards on them all. Just to provide landscaping in the building, the whole idea behind that is to, so these concrete buildings or block buildings don't just look blah. You need the waiver because you have garage doors around the whole side of the building. This property is not gonna be mainly visible, but from the road. So I don't think anybody's gonna have a problem with the 3-foot separation. 5.15, provide 4-inch caliber trees, we just spoke about that. The head wall, wing walls, we'll let Steve worry about that one. Curbing shall not be bituminous concrete. I don't personally have a problem with,
We have the slope granite at the entrance.
yeah, it's a private property. Development impact statement is,
That's where the approval of this site as part of the master plan of that whole designated development district comes in, because it did get me for review for the building.
well, it's always, anything that's gone in the park for all the years that I've been here has always been a lot streamlined, more so than,
We did have a meeting
we
with the
did-
department heads also.
yeah, and we always, even though the drainage was already approved, and we've always asked that they've kind of helped out a little bit on their property, and I see that they are addressing that. So, yes, Burke, question.
I want to back up. Where's the zoning line? And what are you going to do on each side of the zoning line?
If you look at looking at the building, the footprint that there is now, the rectangular part on the right, if you just squared,
You have a line on the first one?
Well, it's-
Scroll up a little bit.
yeah, we have a map showing the zoning line. Why don't we do it that way?
The text is right there at the bottom.
It's about 60% of land area of the building footprint would be in the business, and about 40% would be in the ED. So if you squared off that rectangle, that's just about the zoning district line, right here. If you went
Okay,
right there, just
All
like
right.
that. It's very, very close to
All
the
right.
footprint.
and you've talked to Bob that you have to get occupancy permits from, and he's satisfied with what you're doing in each section that
Yeah,
it
I've
meets
given
zoning?
him a letter addressing all the parts of the bylaw and what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and how we're breaking it up with the footprint of the building.
Okay.
Yes.
You said some things that you're not going to do? No used trucks?
Well, we're not gonna store and have used trucks. We might take a trade-in. It could be there for a couple of days before it goes off somewhere else, but we don't.
But you're not
keep-
going to have 50 used
No,
trucks
no,
lined up
no.
in
And
various,
And no parts vehicles either,
okay,
and no trailers.
all right.
So it's not gonna be a surplus yard.
And how
We
do
wanna
we,
sell new parts.
how do we know that this is going to be true? You're going to be out there every morning, Bob, checking on it?
I don't think we have to be, because being in the park, they have to make the park happy, I think, before they make the town happy. The people in the park, their board, their committee that they have really monitors each other.
Well, and you're going to need a license to sell motor vehicles.
Correct. We're before Concom now, and as soon as we get this approval, we go to the selectmen next for the vehicle license to sell the trucks.
And are you willing to have a restriction that you won't sell any used vehicles? Still sell a used vehicle.
Yeah, I don't think
I
that
mean,
would
it- we won't,
It's not the normal.
we won't take them in and stock a number of vehicles there, but if one comes in on a trade and it's on the lot and someone wants to buy it, we want to be able to sell it. But it's not the focus of the business at all.
Burke, similar to any new car dealership on 44, if they're considered a new car dealership, they have the right to take a trade-in and sell a used vehicle. These people
Well,
would.
I know that, but I wondered if they were willing to have a restriction that they wouldn't do that. I just think, we've gone through this and we know what Shrewsbury looks like, and it doesn't look good. We don't want this place to look like it.
It's a distribution and repair facility. They did say they're gonna have new sales, but they're only gonna sell several new vehicles, so they're considered a new dealership, which is allowed in the zone. Then they have the right to flip, if you would, they would have the right to take in a used vehicle and then resell it. Not as their primary business, though, but as a, product of their primary business.
How many parking spaces on this?
148.
So the last project that you were in front of us had almost 300, I guess?
And we had trailer parking on that one that's been eliminated.
So there's a lot of, 100.
How many people are gonna work there?
When it gets fully ramped up, you may have 25 employees there. I think that's the number that was discussed when it gets in full
And how many
operation.
people would be in looking at new trucks and parts at one time?
Very few.
So you have a whole lot more parking than you need.
I don't know whether we need it or not, but, it was designed that way.
Okay.
We're not that many over the required amount, 131 to 148.
Mhm.
So we haven't exceeded the bylaw by much. But it has been laid out for 148. About 85 of them are laid out for tractors, and my number on that, 85 are laid out for the tractors and 63 are laid out for passenger vehicles or the small trucks that deliver the parts.
How many small trucks will be out delivering parts?
It's busy. I'd have to, how many delivery vans or vehicles will you have?
From this location, 6 to 10 maybe.
Okay.
Plus 6 to 10, they're going to be there probably in the morning and when they come back, because if they're sitting in the parking lot, they're not making any money.
They're not gonna, they're
So-
not gonna be stored there, right? They're gonna blow
I
it.
wonder if they're gonna be registered here, and how many vehicles.
Yeah, so,
Like FedEx.
oh,
FedEx registered here or corporate?
They're supposed to be registered here.
They're registered at their corporate office?
Supposed to be registered here.
I know, but they physically are registered at their corporate office, is that what they're doing now?
Well, the object is to get the tax dollars in.
No, I
for the-
understand where you're going with it, I was just wondering what the actual is.
I don't know the actual, I know what was supposed to be.
Because I know like at U-Haul, all the trucks are registered in Arizona, that's their headquarters. Even though you go in there and see a truck with 200 miles on it, and it's got an Arizona plate, because they assembled them up in Waltham, and then get the registration out of Arizona.
Uh-huh.
Going through that now with the assessors, we're unfortunately having to give a lot of abatements and stuff, but
Because of
ones
that,
they
yeah.
pulled out and registered other places instead of here.
so we'll let the assessors worry about their registrations.
So in summary, I think we don't have any engineering obstacles.
I'm not ready for your summary yet.
You
I didn't
want to
ask,
hear more?
I didn't ask for your summary.
I heard that there was a pause. I wonder
No,
if
there
that-
was. I was just letting Mr. Gallagher finish with his comment. My question is, we dealt with this quite a bit on the last project in pollution. You have to file with DEP. Is there anything they have to file with for nothing special. How about holding tanks for oils and all that other stuff?
They don't keep any fuel on site. They wash vehicles, so they have a recycling system to wash the vehicles. They change oil, so they must have a wastewater tank.
Right, and I remember there was something about, I think, last time, Steve, from the other site, you had, there was concerns that the tanks weren't gonna be big enough or something. I just remember there was something that we did, and they came back and changed it, so.
There was a shut-off valve before the detention basin in
Oh,
case
maybe
something
that's what it
spilled in the
was.
parking lot and hit the storm drain.
So
they
whatever
could
we
shut
did,
it down.
whatever we did on the last one, I'm sure, even though they don't have as much drainage issues on this one as they did on the other one, I think those things should still be addressed and put in there, make sure. And then, even though you're out in the, in the midst of all these other trucks, especially, FedEx just comes to mind. I guess, I don't know, I wouldn't want to be putting restrictions on something because we didn't, anybody else over there, but having trucks idling and,
You have the state regs on that, the
Right,
CMR and
so-
idling.
this is, this location, it's far different than what we had before. It's just, it's night and day, so. That's all I have. Any additional questions, comments? Burke?
I have trouble seeing that far. Tell me again.
Behind you, too.
Across, well, yeah, then I gotta go over there. Anyway, the front of the building, glass, bollards, what did we decide on that?
Well, on the front of the building, there's a large area between this curb stop and the building. There's a grass landscaped area and then a sidewalk and then the building. So I think your curb stops, your cars are probably 15 feet off of the front of the building.
Any walkway, any parking that's,
20.
any parking that abuts a walkway has to have bollards. So that's just,
Okay.
that's just gonna be required. If there's a parking, putting wheel stops is only something that the salt's gonna eventually deteriorate. So if you have, a parking that's adjacent to a walkway, add a bollard. Make it really nice, put lights in it. Then you have a nice walkway, be even prettier. Which pretty isn't in our bylaws, so that's up to you.
It's in the eye of the beholder.
Just in, that's right, it is, it's in the eye of the beholder. So, other than that, landscape strip, 3 foot, I think, with what you're gonna see, I don't think it's gonna be anything that you're gonna need additional landscaping.
Right, with the garage
Obviously, you
doors.
can't because of all the garage
Right.
doors, I mean, it's defeating the purpose.
So we will add the bollards where the parking is adjacent to a walkway. We will have the engineer look at a shut-off valve on the drainage system before it hits a detention basin.
And then the legal part of that easement, I think we're gonna have something that Mr. Fountain can read that's gonna be, it's obviously gonna be attached to this piece of property.
When it goes from party A to party B, party A is gonna reserve the right to go across it. When it goes from Bumillas to the buyer, the Bumillas are gonna reserve that easement across the lot.
Where is the easement?
Well, where it's going to be is
The right side of the building.
right there.
So are they gonna go right through the parking lot?
Yes, they'll follow the traffic flow, the lanes for the, same lanes that the tractors will use that are getting worked on there.
So basically, you're just gonna have an easement at the property line.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have an easement throughout the site, just, it's gonna be more wording than it is
It's gonna be
actual.
limited to a pathway out to Paramount Drive.
Just know if we happen to work at night, out on 24 or any of the highways.
You can go in and out.
The other issue that, when we met with the department heads, the police chief was pretty emphatic, and we were doing it anyways, about having that break in the island on Paramount Drive so you can take a left and direct the trucks up to the lights at the major intersection coming out of the park. So that, you can see from the plans, we're gonna do that as well. And the chief of police was quite happy with that. Fire chief was satisfied with access by the fire trucks around the building. So we really didn't have any issues.
Okay, if nothing else from the board, Bob, you have anything to add?
I think you handled most of it. They will need a color rendering for the board to digest at the next meeting. You talked about the bollards. Retaining wall design, some kind of an engineered design, and some kind of a picture of what the retaining wall is going to look like for the next meeting.
Where's the retaining wall going?
I believe it's at the back of the parking lot.
Is that a Versaloff wall?
Maybe the engineer can answer that question.
It's on the east side, well, not the engineer, but it's on the east side of the
Locations.
parking lot, where, adjacent to the wetlands. It slopes down in that direction, it slopes from
All right,
west to
so
east.
anything, generally, any retaining wall, obviously, is gonna have some manufacturer's database. Make sure Steve gets a copy of that, so it can be addressed, Steve, and
How tall is the retaining wall?
That question came up at Concom, and I think Dan Gagny, the primary civil engineer of the job, said it was about 8 to 10 feet.
So we'll want to
So it's-
sign off
so
by
it's
the
6 feet.
It
engineer.
has to be an engineered stamped, yeah, and we're aware of that.
okay.
My only question, maybe, internal motions, when you're bringing tractor trailers in, Peter, maybe you can help me with this. Just seems like there's a lot of turning you have to do to get to your easement. Didn't know if a secondary access way for your trucks that would bring you straight in would make it easier than navigating all the way around this.
Well, it's designed for truck traffic anyway, so it's
All right, just bring it,
unless we keep the existing access that we have there now, but I don't know if they want to do that or not.
just a thought when I'm looking at the plan.
Well, it's a good thought, it's practical, but I don't know how the park feels about having two entrances for this. Well, why don't you ask the question?
What question?
Question as to whether or not the park would be amenable to you having a second entrance exit out of this lot.
That's gonna be, that's gonna get kinda confusing, though. Which entrance,
There's only gonna be one.
which entrance do you,
Well, as Bob just talked about, with where the easement is, you gotta drive all through the park, through the
I would
site.
anticipate the truck would come this way, you know?
no, you're already going the wrong way. I think the traffic's going down and
Yes.
around and going out that way.
Okay, all right, so it's going counterclockwise?
Yeah, so they're gonna have to follow.
Okay, yeah, that's,
I don't care, Bob just threw it out, and,
yeah. I mean, the traffic flow accommodates
okay.
tractor-trailer trucks.
All right.
It's not a heavy volume traffic, it's more on a case-by-case basis when they use it. So both the buyer and the seller are comfortable.
Bob, you wanna click our picture?
Okay,
Are comfortable with the arrangement.
all right.
We need a time to act.
Are we close enough to have Attorney Brennan do a proposed certificate of action?
In my opinion, we are.
Okay.
I think we're, Steve, you can finish up by our next meeting with them, you think?
Correct, yes.
If we can, you give us your letter, basically, all of this, like Beals and Thomas gave us, no response required, no response. That just makes an awful lot of reading
How
for,
long do you think you're going to be with conservation? And is there any reason for us to hold off on the vote?
Now, we're going back in on the 4th, and we had our first presentation the other night, and the board didn't have any.
they're gonna want our,
Serious
they're gonna
issues.
want our vote before
So we-
they do finish
Yeah,
their,
we
they
go
close
back
the
in the
hearing.
night before, we go back in on the 4th to Concom, the 5th here. So I think we'll finish up at Concom, because Azu hadn't given us his review letter yet. So we should finish there on the 4th and here on the 5th.
Okay.
Okay, so, and you're gonna be able to clean all the rest of the stuff up with them and just have a nice and direct letter of the waivers that we can vote on, and then just a list of any final concerns and... Okay, so, we can continue this until September 5th at 6:30. So, ATG Land Holdings Paramount Drive Site Plan is continued, 6:30 on September 5th. All right, thank you.
Mr.
See you
Chairman,
next.
what would you like on the time to act? How much time do you need on the time to act request? Is September 5th, all right?
At the end of September.
September, so I would do the second meeting in September.
19th? That would be the 19th?
Just in case something happens on the 5th and we're all scrambling to... The next hearing is, I am going to be recusing myself for, it's public hearing for Riverwalk. And thank you, Mr. Brennan. Pass that down.
Well, I'll make a motion that we waive the reading and approve the minutes of July 18 and August 1.
And seconded, any discussion, all in favor?
Aye. I don't think we have any correspondence?
I do not have any.
Okay. I don't either.
Invoices were passed down. Maureen, on those, you had mentioned, we asked Mrs. Harris about the $7,500. Did we ever send her a? Now, she was very nice last week. Steve, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So let's see if we can finish up with them
Hearing.
next hearing, so it's, all right?
Okay.
Thank you.
She wasn't, she's looking for a tally with the bills.
All right, so when you send that back to her, just remind her about the $7,500, because eventually it's gonna, if it gets, we don't wanna be stuck in saying, please go away, we can't see you. Planning board coordinator update, anything special?
I'll make it brief. Okay, on Tuesday night, August 27th, at 6:30 in this room, there's going to be a meeting from the DOT to discuss the repaving of Route 138. 6:30 Tuesday night, week from this Tuesday night in this room, if anyone's interested. We'll get the schedule, the new schedule from DOT about the repaving of 138 and reconstruction. August 27th.
Now, reconstruction in 138, that has nothing to do with Center Street's reconstruction?
All right, that's my next item. You'll see some activity on Center Street now. There is a company that's actually relocating the gas line that they found last year was in the way to reconstruct that intersection. So they are planning on moving the gas line to get it out of the way.
Is that why the road's blocked off now?
The road's been blocked off. They're finding the gas line now. They're going to bury it deeper to get out of the way of the new structures that they have to put in. Once that is done, there'll be another delay. They're going back to do the reconstruction late next spring, and the reason we're being told is the original design is no longer adequate. It has to be redesigned. The design that they had planned for is now obsolete, and they're going to need the winter to come up with some new plans for a new design. So there is activity there, but you're not going to see the new streets, the new lights there until probably beginning of next summer. And then finally, the last thing I have for you is I did have a meeting on Tuesday morning with the town administrator, myself, and Serped. We did engage them to start the process for our new master plan. They will be holding workshops. It's going to take them 20 to 24 months to come up with this plan, so in the next 6 to 8 months, they're going to start workshops, and that'll be ongoing until they come up with a new master plan. I'll keep you posted as to when those workshops are going to happen. Cardinal Drive, Christopher's Way, they're both moving forward with the repavement. We have a final as-built plan on Nina's Way. They'll be looking for town approval of that roadway at the next town meeting. That's all I got. Questions?
What's going on 130, a little further down on 138? I think yesterday, or the day before, they were digging in front of the old Quality Auto. They're working,
Sewer.
is it sewer? Is that what they're digging up by?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Because they've
Chairman.
had those lanes,
I was with the DOT guy in Plymouth this past week.
okay,
and
I was
he
just
told me
curious,
he-
figured it might have
he-
something to do
He
with
was here in the
that.
morning, and he was with me later in the afternoon.
So they're running new lines, is that what it is?
They're doing what I was gonna have Walmart do for free, carry it to the town line.
Okay.
On the master plan,
They didn't want to do that.
we're gonna have forums. Can they make sure that it's, do the best they can to advertise it so we get people out? Because the last thing we want to do is spend $100,000 for a master plan and get to the end and say, people, we didn't know anything about the master plan.
Yeah, they have a pretty good outreach program. They've done this for several towns. Dartmouth, they're doing it in Lakeville now, they've done Berkeley. So it seems like they have a pretty good handle on their program. But again, I'll keep you informed as to when and where and how.
Very good.
When we did it 20 years ago, there were a lot of subcommittees, and it
Oh, I
was
know.
well advertised.
Well, there was a ton of committees.
Yeah.
Richard McCarthy was running, he was in charge of it, and there was, we had a lot of committees, a lot of meetings. Anything for Serpide before I leave?
I had reported on it last time, just quickly for those who weren't here. July 1st was the start of the 20-hour for each of the two group period, so keep that in mind. And as far as the master planning thing, the town at the last town meeting allocated $70,000 towards that effort for Serpide. The only other thing is that Serpide was given $200,000 in funds to work on mitigation costs to the towns in the area of what may be the Taunton Casino. I guess that's back in business, because they're going to be working on mitigation for the surrounding towns. But I haven't seen anything more, unless anybody else has, about it going forward. I haven't seen any work happening there, so I don't know what the situation is.
I haven't heard anything at the federal level. I understand it's back in Congress.
Whatever.
Gonna be late to the
The,
party.
the state has allocated $4.1 million, and Serpide got $200K of that. But that's about it.
Should it be a waste of money like the train went through, and we got all these grant money
I
to
don't
do all these studies that, down there in Middleborough. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Fountain.
And I'm going to call a 2-minute recess.
You gentlemen have a wonderful evening.
Okay, 2-minute recess it is. Good idea. Thank you.
Almost go home with it.
Thank
No.
you.
Make the whole
meeting anymore?
My last one.
You want me to ask him? Wayne, are we all set to go?
All set? Okay. All right, continued public hearing, Riverwalk Adult Retirement Community.
It's a hesitation, that's what it is.
Good evening. Attorney Ryan Prophet, counsel for Raynham Riverwalk LLC. With me tonight, I have Steve Giosa from SciTech Engineering. So I think we're down to the end of this. I know at the last meeting, we were waiting for the review of the final plan from the town's engineer, JC Engineering. We received that final sign-off. And I believe there's a representative from JC Engineering here tonight as well. I have a copy for the board members of the letter. So, as you can see, to paraphrase a little bit, that JC has no further comments or recommendations for the applicant. All outstanding comments have been addressed, and it's in JC's opinion that the project is in conformance with the intent and guidelines of the Town of Raynham zoning bylaw, Article 18 for ARCs, the relevant sections of the subdivision rules and regulations, and the Massachusetts stormwater standards. Additionally, we received a updated letter from the Town of Raynham Fire Department, the fire chief. He's reviewed the most recent plans and has found that the streets and the common driveways are within development, provide adequate access for the fire and ambulance and the emergency vehicles. I have a copy of that letter for the board as well.
What's the date on that?
This is July 25th.
Okay, got it.
July 25th?
July 25th. You got it? Sorry, thanks. And as we stated before, we applied for the variance with the ZBA for the buffer zone along the back of the property. The variance was allowed, it was never appealed. I don't know if the board has a copy of that decision, but I have a copy of that for them as well. You have that?
I have it
That's what you
anyway.
sent us, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Giosa. He can address any questions you have with anything with the plan. But I think we're at the point where we're ready for, to hear your opinion on a vote tonight.
Okay, well, I want to turn it over to Mr. Churchill.
I didn't, Brian, do you want me to go up to the stand?
Yes, please.
Identify yourself.
My name is Brian Wallace with JC Engineering. As the attorney stated, we released our final review letter stating that we had no further recommendations or comments based on the July 29th plan set. But if there's any questions specific to the board, I'd be happy to answer that.
Does the board have any questions? I do not. Russ?
No.
Chris?
I think we've been through most of this.
I still have kind of zoning issues, but I'm going to just, I'll show what I feel.
You don't have any questions for the engineer?
But no, I don't have any for the engineer.
Okay.
No, not for him.
That was pretty easy, huh? Sit down, but don't go too far.
I'll be right over there.
Okay. Okay, I am going to ask a lot of straw votes on various parts of the, of Article 18, our zoning article, and I am going to leave the, we're definitely taking a final vote tonight. I am leaving the hearing open in case we want input from Mr. Iafredi or the engineer or whatever. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask of anyone before I get started? Okay. Mr. Gioso, you're up next.
Good evening. For the record, Steve Giosa with SciTech Engineering. If you want, I can just review the very final revisions that were made to the plan, just so the board has an idea of what changes were. They were relatively minor in nature, but I'll defer to the board on whether you want me to do that or just be ready to answer questions. Yes.
I would like you to give us a history of what generally, not so much little changes, I'll let you finish with that, but what are your big changes from the beginning to where you are now?
Okay, so from the beginning, the original plan had 49 proposed lots. Very similar configuration with one exception. The major change had to do with the primary road of the project, so the road that originates
That thing's not engineered very well, is it?
No, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the easel that I left here on Wednesday last week and set that up. It's a little more stable. Here, Russ, check that connection for me. For the record, we don't know that came from, so.
So if you broke it, you don't.
I own it.
You don't mind.
Understood. There, a little more stability. So, as I was beginning to explain, the main road coming in from Route 44, we've always had the cul-de-sac here, but we also had a continuation of the roadway out to Church Street, and that was a point of significant debate going back to the very first meeting on the project. And after getting the input from the board members expressed significant concerns regarding that point of access. Then we did come up with a revised plan that eliminated that primary road heading out to Church Street and replaced it with a gravel emergency access way. And that eliminated the day-to-day traffic that, again, some of the residents expressed concern with, some of the board members expressed concern with, going back out to Church Street, and then basically focusing the primary traffic back out onto Route 44. To control that,
You have a bigger version of that other than the, what do you call that?
actually, we can go right to that section since we're speaking directly about that area right now. Plans in this set. Okay. So, this is that termination point, Church Street, and this is the emergency access we were just referring to. That has been now designed with breakaway bollards on either end. We've got a paved apron at the Church Street end and an apron at the cul-de-sac side, breakaway bollards and signage depicting that as an emergency access point. And so that's, I think, is probably the one significant change that has been made since the original plans came forward. To, again, make that, we're running utility lines through that area, which is allowed activity in those locations. We're bringing the water line in from Church Street, and we are looping some electric service and communication lines also from Church Street. The other significant change we made is in the same area. If you recall, on the first couple of versions of the plan, right in that area there, we had proposed to have RV and boat storage. It was determined that that was not an allowed by right location for that activity. We did go before the zoning board and then withdrew that particular element from our petition with zoning. So we've eliminated that as well from that location. So those are probably the biggest changes overall to the plan. But if we go back to the very first plan, you'll remember we had much narrower pavement widths. Again, board members expressed a concern about the size of the development and the pavement width, so we opened up the pavement to a wider cross-section. And we think, again, that's an improvement to the public safety and overall access within the development. We also changed some of our drainage associated with that because we originally started with a porous pavement design, as the board may recall. And the porous pavement, there were a lot of concerns raised because it really hadn't been proven in this area. There was some reluctance regarding that option. For long-term maintenance and stability within the road system, and so we did back away from the porous pavement and went to a more conventional. We did a number of storm scepter water quality treatment units now. And we think, again, that that addresses that primary concern at this time. I think the porous pavement has a place somewhere in the future, but obviously not for this particular project. And so We redesigned our drainage. That obviously changed our drainage analysis. We had to add some additional flow mitigation as well as water quality mitigation, and also had to demonstrate that we were meeting the recharge requirements in an alternate method. So we've been able to do that to the satisfaction of your consultant. And in doing that, it added a number of drainage easements to the plan that didn't exist on the earlier versions, and those have been added. Those were some of the final comments that did come in from the consultant on the plan. So those are probably the major shifts in the design from day one to now. We have also reduced the number of lots. Again, we started out with 49. When you look at the plan, and you'll see the lots are numbered up to 48. So that's one off the plan, but also because the zoning change didn't occur last year or earlier this year, and we didn't get a zoning relief to allow residential use in this area, those 4 lots, although they're depicted on the plan, are designated on the recordable drawings as not being buildable lots. So the net result is we started with 49 lots. We're down to 48 depicted on the plan, but out of the 48, only 44 are buildable lots. So it's a reduction a net reduction since day one of 5 lots within the project, and those lots are now shown on the grading plans as just being open space in terms of we're not clearing trees on those lots. They're just gonna be created on paper but not designated as a buildable lot. We would not be able to obtain building permits for those lots because they would not comply with the zoning to build a structure on those properties. So they are specifically noted as non-buildable lots on the recordable plans. And I guess that's probably the last of the major changes that have occurred.
Okay. And Mr. Gallagher has worked with you on this. From the last time you saw a plan to now, you say there's some minor changes? What are the last few changes you made?
The last few changes, and we've outlined these in a July 29th letter, so the July 29th revisions, we added drainage easements to lots 1, 5, and 20. So lots 1, 5, and 20, we've added drainage easements, and that was the result that we had made some changes to the drainage design, and it was basically an oversight in not creating designated easements on those lots, so we've added that to the plan set. There was a request that on the definitive plans that we include the proposed street widths. So again, that's just a notation on the recordable plans as to the width of the right-of-ways for the different streets. From a stormwater management standpoint, there was a request that we utilize the DEP stormwater protocol for street sweeping. They have a very specific methodology they wanted to see. So in the plan set, there is a operation and maintenance plan for stormwater management long-term once the development is completed. So we've incorporated DEP's stormwater standard for street sweeping. There was a request for some additional sediment control in one portion of the emergency access area, which we are providing, and that'll be incorporated during the construction process. There was also a request that under the operation and maintenance plan that we put in a provision that because we're providing a gravel emergency access way, that we provide something to make sure that during or after major storm events that there's an inspection of that to make sure we're not getting erosion or a deterioration of the usefulness of that road. So within the operation and maintenance plan, which is on sheet 11 of the construction plans, we have added a maintenance note for that part of the project. And then there was a request for us to add one last waiver request to the cover sheet, which was done, and that had to do with 8.1 stormwater management. That was a request to allow an increase in runoff volume, not peak flows, but volume. It was a de minimis increase determined by the consultant to be de minimis, and therefore it was felt it might be an appropriate waiver for the board to consider. Those are the last changes that you had not seen prior to tonight's meeting.
Okay. Do any board members have questions concerning the minor changes that he has just talked about?
If I may.
You may.
The trailer and boat storage, you can't put it up in that corner. Have you relocated it? And if so, if it shows relocated on there, I assure you I can't see it from this distance.
Sure.
Okay, give me a point of reference. Church Street is on the left?
Nope. Route
Route 44 is on the left, okay.
This is the main entrance coming in. This is the community building down in this area
Okay.
here near Route 44. These spaces right here are designated for boat and RV storage in this area. And we're providing for, the regulations don't have a set number. And obviously, what'll end up happening is as units are sold within this development, those spaces will be issued on a first-come, first-served basis. When they're sold, that'll be the last available one, and future residents will have to not have RVs or boat storage within development. So because we're controlling the sales, there'll be a mechanism to make sure that that's adequate for the development, and we'll make sure that the project stays in compliance with the regulations of not storing on the individual lots.
Okay. I have two other things that keep nagging at me in terms of the overall plan. And one is in relationship to the zoning bylaws, the definition, 18.3, a self-contained alternative residential community. I don't see it as self-contained in that this business where these lots, buildable or not buildable, you don't have to repeat that for me because I understand that fully. These lots and this cul-de-sac, unless I've got a plan that doesn't have it, are outside of that business-zoned area. They're in a residential-owned area, which says the project is not self-contained. It's outside of that. That's number one. I'll give you both of them, and then you can address them as you like. And the second one is this common driveway that you've come up with, up at the entrance to 44, to get around the business of the 200 feet, because you're not 200 feet from the opening with lot number one. If I'm reading this correctly, that common driveway that goes across lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5's property is a common driveway to the whole area, not just those lots. Because if I want to get to the community building, I got to go across that common driveway. And when I look at that, I don't see it as a common driveway. If everybody has to use it, then it becomes a roadway, not a common driveway. That's how I look at this. I'm not an engineer, okay? Many times you hear Danny say, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer, but when I look at that, and I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't let a community of 45 residents go across my driveway to get to a building on the other side of the property. That just doesn't seem like it's a common driveway. That seems like it's a roadway and should meet the requirements of a roadway, and it does not satisfy the requirements of entrance to these lots from the main road. Those are my two concerns.
If I could expand on this common driveway. I kept mentioning throughout the process that when the common driveway was first done for the ARC, it was a T-type driveway with Berry Hill, and that was what was presented. And so I went back and pulled the old Berry Hill plans, and I'm just going to put them up there just as evidence to what I saw, and this is what I consider a common driveway. I agree with John. In fact, when these driveways, this lot 5, all this over here is its lot area. So the lot area on these lots is on the other side of the street. And they're complying with their lot area by using not only the roadway as lot area,
But across the driveway.
but across the street. So this, and when this was done, Bob Iafredi in his letter to the zone basically said, this should be built to the same specs as every roadway, and it should have a road name. So it's gonna look like a duck, but not quite like one, I guess. So it just is a fast stretch to a common driveway, in my opinion. It's more of a roadway, and it allows everyone in the whole development to go through that. So you can have everyone going through your yard, and that wasn't the intent of is that when we first wrote the bylaw, the only ones that were still here was myself and Burke when the bylaw was written. And we did, this is Berry Hill was the only other ARC to go by. And it was written to be a template for this and for others in the future. So Berry Hill, Berry Hill, this was what we were discussing for common driveways to eliminate curb cuts. So, you know, you had some that had single driveways, but a lot of them we went to design them as common driveways, and that was what a common driveway was to be. Not something like this that's a road that actually has but it's a roadway.
There we go.
It's in effect a roadway that has not common driveways, but individual driveways. No different than any of these individual driveways with the identical road and the identical cross-section. So if this is a road, if this isn't a road, they're both built to the exact same spec. They both have the driveways coming off in the exact same fashion. The only difference is you call this an easement. And if that's the case, then you could do that to the whole project and use the roadway as lot area. But this is what the intent was when we did common driveways.
Chris, I have a problem with you saying, gee, this is what the intent was. The statute speaks for itself.
No, I know, but the statute also says that it has to be approved by both planning board and fire department, so we'd have to take a vote on that, just like we would anything else.
Got it on my list.
But that's what we had as common driveways. And as far as like the 75-foot strip, that was to residential on this other sheet. The only thing that could penetrate the screening was the main roadway, which is what is shown, or easements, where we had a water easement and a sewer easement, which is going to come up to, you know, this was the same page of it. And if you notice, this has all nice 50-foot layouts. It meets all subdivision standards for road construction, which, I don't know, I don't agree with narrow streets with elbows, because basically some of the streets are the width of 2 parking spaces, so you're driving 2 feet from each other. But this was the residential buffer, and this was the common driveways. And when this was presented, it actually had an 8x11 sheet when we were doing the ARC that Rich McCarthy drew up that had the common driveway just as a T like this. And, you know, you can vote how you want, but I don't see that as a common driveway.
Okay.
And that's my opinion. I'm just showing you from a past design what was done, and that was what I think the intent was when the bylaw was done. I mean, it didn't spell it right out, but it did leave it up to interpretation, and we're all entitled to our own interpretation.
Anything to add, Russ? At this time? Okay, I'm going to take some straw votes for things. Article 18 of the zoning bylaw, the purpose, does this meet the purpose? Does this provide an alternative housing opportunity for persons 55 years of age or older? John, does it or doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Chris?
Yeah.
Burke, yes?
Yeah.
Russ, yes? Okay. Provide an attractive and suitable residential environment more amenable to the needs of people in their later years. Richard McCarthy write this?
In their later years? What does that mean?
Is it a suitable residential environment for older people? John?
Yes.
Chris?
Yeah.
Burke, yes. Russ, yes. Encourage creative and innovative site planning and design in order to enhance the attractiveness, suitability of this alternative housing type and to better meet the specific housing needs of this segment of the population.
I would say no.
I
John?
think, did you say, does it use creative ideas? I think the common driveway is a very creative idea. And it's too creative for my liking. That's my straw vote on that one.
Well, does it encourage creative and innovative site planning?
I don't know, that's an arbitrary judgment. I don't know what to tell you.
You
on that.
abstain from,
In terms of your straw vote, yeah, I abstain from commenting on whether it does or not.
Chris?
A lot of what is written in the bylaw, including this sentence, is all judgmental and not law. So I think, to me, I'm not even gonna waste my time yes or no on any of that stuff that's read like that. Because, I mean, is it creative? I don't know. That's totally judgmental.
Well, I don't know, it's...
It's all opinion.
Well,
I think it's like
it's the purpose.
creative.
It's the
Like,
purpose.
it's very creative
It's the
to
purpose of
maximize
the
what you can
bylaw,
get
and
for
for
lots.
us to make a special permit, we have to decide whether or not it meets the purpose of the bylaw. So this is the purpose of the bylaw.
Well, actually,
Does or doesn't?
when it, I can see what section you're on.
18.1.
As far as creativity, I will say, I will disagree with that thing.
Okay. So you two are no's. I'm a yes. Russ?
I'm a yes.
Encourage preservation of common land for open space and recreational use by promoting highest and best utilization of land in harmony with natural features, and to retain the rural character of the town. Does this save common land for open space? John?
It does have open space.
You got
yeah,
a
I
yes
agree
on
with
that. Chris?
It meets the open
Yes.
space criteria.
Burke, yes. Russ, yes. I'm going to turn to the engineer for this one. The tract of land contains at least 20 acres.
Yes.
Going to be served by town water and town sewer.
Yes.
You have a clubhouse,
Yes.
which under the bylaw is a community facility. Is it designed to, in conformance with existing Massachusetts standards for handicapped accessibility?
Yes.
All of the buildable lots comply with dimensional requirements. They each have frontage of at least 50 feet, lot area of at least 10,000 square feet, and lot width of 50 feet.
Yes.
Is there another ARC development within 5,000-foot radius of this one?
I'm going to say no, to my best of my knowledge.
There's one other in town,
I
and
can
it's,
answer that, if you want. The other one is...
You have to go and identify yourself, Chris.
Ryan Prophet, counsel for the Raynham Riverwalk. The other development is Berry Hill. It's like 3.8 miles away, which is like 20,000 square feet. So-
okay, thank you.
Is Pine Hill Estates considered a adult
No,
retirement?
no.
No?
That's a 55 and over, but it's not a ARC.
Okay.
Back to the engineer. All infrastructure, sewage, drainage facilities, utilities, are designed in accordance with all applicable federal, state, and town laws?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not without the waivers. They actually aren't. I mean, right, as they're sitting, they don't meet the regulations. But further
Okay.
on, it's, waivers are allowed.
Which portion you want right now? Burke?
18.6.
26. Thank you.
Maureen, 18.7 is conditions of approval. If we approve this, all of these conditions, 18.7A through I, should be included in a certificate of action. And it's kind of out of order, but I'm going to throw it in. If the other members of the board agree to having a condition that construction vehicles will enter and exit by Route 44 and not by Church Street, except for when they're actually doing the construction on that easement area.
Yeah.
Is that a yes from John?
Yep.
Chris?
Yes.
Yes. Burke? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Back to the engineer. At least 20% of total tract area set aside as common land.
Yes.
Not more than 30% of that is bordering vegetated wetland.
Yes.
What is the use of the common land? Passive, active recreation, park purposes?
Passive recreation, there are walking trails proposed in those areas,
Okay, and that's it?
and there are some utility lines that will across those areas which are allowed.
Okay.
What'd you do? Oh, we got it up there. Very good. You didn't even touch it.
You got it back? All right. We need a condition that the common area will be subject to easements for construction, maintenance, repair of utility and drainage facilities to the town, easements running to the town.
Could you repeat that one, Bart?
Yeah, it's
Oh, give me a number.
18.9B,
Okay.
easement for construction, et cetera. The common, back to the engineer, common land area, man-made impervious surfaces, no more than 20% of the common land.
That's correct.
Okay. For the board, do we find that there is adequate access to each dwelling unit and that each access is convenient and appropriate for residents and emergency vehicles? John?
And you are at 18 what?
18.11A.
I'm not sure how that fits in line with this common driveway thing that I'm not crazy about. So I'm going to say no on that one.
Chris?
I'm going to say no as well.
Burke, yes. Russ?
Yes.
Do open spaces, house sites, streets, et cetera, design due respect to natural landscaping features? John?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Yes. Chris?
Well, I mean, you're going to clear cut the whole development and leave all the open space untouched, so, yeah, pretty much.
Yes. Burke, yes. Russ?
Yes.
Yes. Back to the engineer, all utilities will be installed underground?
Yes.
Okay. Has everyone seen the zoning board decision?
Yes.
I've seen it and I've read it, yep.
I mean,
Are we bound by their decision? In other words, if they give a variance for,
we're not bound, I don't feel. I mean, with a special permit granting authority, we could put any condition.
okay? So the question is, are we bound by their decision, and do we have to go by what they say? John?
I don't think so. You know, some of the things that they decided on, I don't feel they have the authority to decide on. They can't make decisions on zoning. And in fact, I'm sorry if I may finish. And in fact, this business with the lots are not all self-contained within the unit. They're making the decision on usage of the zoning, and I don't think they have the authority to do that.
Okay, so the answer to the question, are they bound by, is
We
no?
not bound by is no, right.
Chris?
I'd say absolutely not.
No?
And
Bert?
because I
Yes.
think to expand on what John said, in some cases, by the powers of the zoning board,
Mhm.
they do not have the power to grant a use variance. So
Okay.
even if they grant one, they don't have the power.
Okay, so we're not bound by their decision.
The way they granted the buffer, I don't think they had the power to do that. I think it's kind of immaterial, because the buffer they granted is extended out into a residential zone, like I explained last time. And I'll show you, I have an illustration explaining what I feel about the buffer and the self-contained thing that John's saying.
Okay, so that was a no. Burke is a yes. Russ?
I was hoping we were getting something from town council, but we didn't, but I tend
Well,
to think if
town-
they said.
We
yeah-
did, but
Town
that's,
council,
Well,
we
but it
that's
didn't
useless
address that,
paper,
it
too.
addressed
Yeah.
the road sticking into it, and I thought there was gonna be something about,
he did send a letter, town council, and I don't agree with it at all, but he did send a letter
Okay,
with his logic that says you can take a road and go out one zone and into another from a business to a residential. That would allow you to put roads to access Walmarts in residential zones to get to business zones, and I don't think that's really
okay.
on the up and up.
I would enter the zoning decision into our minutes. and into our, making our decision. I would also enter the July 15th town council letter as part of our deliberations.
That would be, I tend to think that if they said, yes, that we have to go along with that, but.
Okay? So 2 noes, 2
if
yeses on
town council had
that.
said different, then
Okay.
I'd go with them.
Okay, sewer, this is a condition. Sewer mains, hydrants, water mains shall be owned by the town of Raynham, so we need to get a bill of sale to them. And easements will be granted to the town of Raynham and the Raynham Center Water District to service and maintain the sewer mains, hydrants, and water mains.
Is he reading from the number?
I am
It's-
reading
it's
from
about,
18.11 F.
That has both of those conditions in it?
Yes.
Yes.
1811F?
Yep.
Okay.
Engineer, application process.
Well, before you pass by that, just
Yep.
as a note, on that same term, under G, once again, it mentions self-contained. And that's my issue.
Yeah, and chapter 151B is discrimination. So I don't know how that fits in anything.
I don't know why that's,
But-
yeah, because I looked up 51B, and that talks about discriminating because of age,
That's
race,
what I thought.
religion, or whatever,
Yeah.
which is
But it
totally
still
irrelevant to
describes
the...
it as a self-contained
Yeah, that was my point. That's the only
retirement
portion.
community.
That was the only thing I got out of G, is it once again says it's got to be self-contained.
Okay.
The general law doesn't apply.
Well, all right, let's take a vote. Do we believe that this project is a self-contained retirement community? John, no. Chris, no. Burke, yes. Russ?
Yes.
Yes. Engineer, application process. You had 3 steps. Did you have a pre-submission meeting?
Yes,
Then you had a concept preliminary plan?
yes,
And then you had a definitive plan?
yes.
Okay. All right. For the board, is this project consistent?
Number, please.
18.13. Is this project consistent with the general purpose and objectives of this bylaw? John?
I'm going to say no.
Chris?
I'm going to say no as well.
Burke, yes. Russ, yes. Is it in harmony with the existing and probable future use of the area and with the character of the surrounding area and neighborhood? John?
Let me read it to myself once, please.
Okay.
Is in harmony with the existing and probable future uses of the area. I don't know how to answer that one, to be honest with you. Is it in harmony with the existing and probable future use? I mean, there is, the area is an established area. This is the only thing that's future about the area. Everything else is already established, so I don't know how to answer that. I'll say yes, because I'm at a loss for anything else.
Okay. Chris?
I would say it is, but it does not meet zoning, so it would be in harmony, in my opinion.
Is that a yes or a no?
That would be a no.
Okay. Burke, yes. Russ?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the next one, consistent with the purpose of the section, and it's a typo. I'm not sure what section they're talking about, so
This
I'll
section.
go by that one.
Consistent with purpose of section 18.1 and it doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
Already discussed that.
It's 1813C.
See?
Does the
Looks like there's something missing there.
There's something missing there. Does the proposed layout of private ways, lots, and structures, are they designed in harmony with the intent and purpose of the bylaw? John?
I'm saying no, based on that self-contained issue. that I
Chris?
have.
I'm going to say no.
Burke, yes.
That in.
Russ?
Yes.
Yes. Is the proposed layout and use of the common land appropriate in relation to the proposed dwelling units, adjoining open space, topography, soils, and other characteristics? John?
Yeah, I guess the open space meets the requirement.
Okay. Chris?
Yes.
Burke, yes. Russ?
Yes.
Okay. All right, comply, does it comply with the requirements of this bylaw, other applicable requirements of zoning bylaw, and any regulations, guidelines promulgated thereunder. John?
I'm saying no.
Chris?
No.
Burke, yes.
Yes.
Russ, yes. All right, we have an opinion from J.C. Engineering dated August 6, 2019. I enter that into the record. We have a July 25, 2019 letter from the fire department that say they have no problem with the access Route 44 and Church Street. I enter that into the record. What are the waivers you're asking for?
Okay, they're listed on the cover sheet for the plan set. So the first waiver is Section 7 of the zoning, 7.4, 7.4.2F, waiver to allow the main road to be different from the subdivision name.
Okay.
This is the subdivision waiver, I believe.
So it's just a matter of how you name it, is what you're saying?
Yes.
You're not going to name it as Riverwalk?
No, we have Wall Street as the main road as opposed to Raynham Riverwalk.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so...
As long as the police department's okay with it, I'm okay
Okay,
with it.
so, motion to grant that waiver. John? Yes?
Yes.
Chris?
Did you
get a
second it? Who seconded that?
All right. I made the motion.
Seconded.
Say you seconded it. John? That was a yes. Chris?
Yes.
Burke, yes.
Yes.
Russ, yes. Next.
Next waiver, Section 8 of the subdivision regulations, design standards, 8.1, stormwater management, a waiver to allow a minor increase in runoff volume as calculated.
I make a motion that we approve the waiver. Second.
Second.
I
John?
guess I want to ask the engineer, what do you think about that? Because I'm not an expert on stormwater management.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the numbers exactly.
It's all right, just want to know if it's a problem or not.
But what we found is after reviewing the stormwater and, you know, where that increase in volume kind of occurs, it wouldn't impact the properties that are, the lots that are proposed in subdivision. And the ultimate discharge points go off-site to the Taunton River, so we didn't feel it would be impacting abutting properties that are already established in the town, nearby area. So that was kind of the basis of our, you know, opinion on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Based on his recommendation, I'll give it a yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Burke, yes.
Oops, hold on,
Yeah,
Burke.
hold on. Did we all vote on that?
Yes.
That's 4-0, unanimous?
You already done both sides, huh?
Yeah, but I need this one. This is
Yeah, I
just-
know you do.
This is just for me, okay.
All right, go ahead, I'm sorry, Bert.
Next.
Next waiver is Section 8.2, closed drainage system. There are actually 3 provisions within that. The first is subsection A, waiver of the 300-foot interval for surface water disposal. Section C, waiver of catch basin spacing and location. And Section I, waiver to allow HDPE, high-density polyethylene piping.
This is, you're saying this is in the bylaw 8.2?
This is in the subdivision regulations 8.2.
Okay. I guess, once again,
I'd
you're outside of my realm.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Wallace on
Yeah,
that. You apparently don't have any problem with any of those.
I can.
Yeah, please
Yep.
do.
Alright, so that was in reference to the spacing of the catch basins and the discharge points. And Steve might be able to explain this a little better on the site plan, but they utilize swales at certain sections, which is why I think the whole reason they are requesting this waiver is rather than providing catch basins at certain locations, the stormwater will discharge through the swale and off the roadway that way. So that was why we didn't have any issues. The stormwater was still being discharged at proper intervals, just not through catch basins. So I can let Steve explain that a little further if needed.
Yeah, basically, as Brian indicated, there's this section of road here, because we're trying to keep the amount of fill down, the topography changes, which is one of the intents of the regulations of the bylaws, to minimize or work with the natural topography. We went with a more low-impact type process with grass water quality swales and filter strips in this area and in this area here. The main roadway, we do have catch basins with, they're actually at each collection point, the water quality treatment units, and then individual discharge points. But it really applies to this area and here for the spacing, the use of catch basins, and then the high-density polyethylene piping. Again, it's a more common construction material used today, very well accepted throughout the region. And so we typically would use that in place of reinforced concrete pipe, which is the way drainage used to be installed on a more regular basis. So that's what those three waivers are referring to.
Bob, do you have any issues with that? Is that consistent with some of the other developments we've done?
It's actually, we haven't done one.
I'm sorry?
We haven't done any without a closed drainage system, I don't believe.
Well, not in Raynham, but I've seen it before.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we approve the waiver.
Second.
I'll say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 That was unanimous?
Unanimous,
Yes.
yes. Next.
Okay, 8.9 streets. I go through these maybe one at a time. Section E, minimum centerline waiver to allow a 100-foot minimum radius.
I don't think you need that anymore, do you? That street got eliminated.
Well, that was on this section of the road here,
Yeah.
so that's technically a waiver we don't need.
Yeah.
It
Okay,
is on the plan.
all right.
Okay, so the next one is H, waiver of street line intersection radius for the Church Street, Wall Street intersection.
You gotta give me
Doesn't matter
a,
either. That's Church Street, Wall Street doesn't exist anymore.
Well, that's right. Okay, so we got rid of that. Waiver of the right-of-way width for Wall Street and Park Avenue is requested. So both, just to give you the numbers that we're asking for, Wall Street is proposed as a 40-foot right-of-way, and Park Avenue as a 30-foot right-of-way. So that's a waiver request being made.
What is the number on that again?
40 feet.
No, I'm sorry, the.
zoning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Section 8.9J.
Let's get there, please.
I move we allow the waiver. Second,
Is he not? There's no-
discussion.
No, he's not.
After
Where is
rethinking
he?
this,
I'll
if
play him.
you were to come with the narrow right-of-ways, you'd be coming to work into the shoulder, maybe a subsequent utility, anything like that,
Yeah.
you'd end up on private property. I mean, with a 30-foot right-of-way.
Okay,
So I personally am not in favor of granting right-of-ways that narrow, just so it gives you shoulders to work on.
mhm,
And on in effect, a subdivision of this magnitude, we've never done such a thing. We've always kept the right-of-way width that was required. And that's just my thoughts on that.
okay.
Is this 8.9 that you're referring to?
That's subdivision rules and regulations. So you
Okay,
don't
all
find it
right,
in
because
there.
here I am looking at the, and I'm not finding that.
No, you don't gotta.
This is another area where, I'm out of my comfort zone in terms of deciding on. Bob, what do you think? I look to you as the expert in this area.
Depends on the
And
utilities.
and you're welcome, and you're welcome. What?
Depends on the utilities, depends on the sidewalks, so.
Have we done it before? Have you seen it somewhere before?
I don't recall.
Then I guess, I'm not opposed to new things, but
I'm not saying it certainly can work, but you have to put some thought behind it and have, proper layout.
and I guess I'm going to say, let me say no at this point.
Okay,
I'm gonna say no.
I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
Yes, 2-2,
No. 2 to 2.
2 to
Yeah.
2.
Okay, next, 8.9, subsection L, a waiver to the minimum pavement width is requested to allow a 24-foot width for Wall Street and 22 feet for Park Avenue.
Now, you're calling your pavement width from,
Gutter
Gutter
line,
to
gutter line
gutter?
to gutter line, yes.
Yeah, excuse me, she'd like you to repeat that number again? 8 point,
8.9 subsection L, and the pavement widths would be 24 feet gutter line to gutter line, and we have 1-foot Cape Cod berms on either side. And then on Park, 22 feet gutter line to gutter line with 1-foot Cape Cod berms in addition to that on either side.
I make a motion, we approve that waiver.
Seconded.
John?
I'm not comfortable on these things, I've got to ask for opinions.
Okay.
Mr. Engineer?
So 24 feet, gutter to gutter, we feel is pretty typical for a subdivision road. We don't have any issues with that.
Enough room for cars, two cars to pass at the
Yeah,
same time?
you think 12 feet for each lane is fairly standard, so we have no issues with that. And then I would look at the 22 foot width on Park Street, and there's going to be less traffic, less scenarios where cars will be passing each other. So we didn't have any further issues with that pavement width as
But
well.
you have no issues based on what you think the traffic is going to be, or whether or not it's a good
And just good
practice?
engineering practice. as well.
And you think it's a good engineering practice to go to the 22 feet?
I agree with that, yep.
Bob? Yeah? Okay, based on their expertise, I'll say yes.
Chris?
yes.
Burke, yes.
Yes.
Russ, yes.
That was unanimous?
Yes.
Unanimous.
That's a lot of yeses.
8.9 streets, again, subsection P, waiver of the standard street cross-section is requested. That's referring to Park Avenue, where instead of having a crowned roadway, we have a cross slope, and that allows us to utilize the water quality swales and drainage as opposed to structured catch basins. So there's a cross-section that is from one edge of pavement to the other, as opposed to your standard cross-section, which has a crown on the roadway. So that's the requested waiver there.
Well, that's because, is that where the swale is?
Yes.
That's just to pitch everything to one side of the street instead of collect it on both.
For the
Otherwise, you have
swale.
to put another swale and pipe it across.
Yeah. I make a motion, we approve the waiver.
Seconded.
Second?
Based on the fact that we approve the swale, then yes.
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 Yes, unanimous.
Okay, next section, 9.0, construction of ways and installation of utilities. Under that section, 9.7.1, a waiver to allow the use of flared ends in place of masonry head walls. And that would be, again, referring to the outlet points. I think there's 4 or 5 of them in various areas here. And again, the flared ends are more standard when you're dealing with the HDPE pipe. So we're asking for that waiver.
Because of the type of piping that
Because
you're
of the type of
using.
pipe, yeah.
Okay, I'll say yes. Oh, you didn't make the motion yet, I'm sorry. I thought we were still doing this.
We're moving along. I make a motion, we approve the waiver.
Seconded.
Second. John?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Burke? Yes.
Yes.
Russ? Yes. Okay.
Okay, next section, again, section 9.0, 9.9, curbing, a waiver to allow 1-foot Cape Cod berms is requested, as opposed to your standard vertical curb.
So there's no sidewalks at all?
No, there's sidewalks, but instead of a
Instead of the
vertical curb,
vertical-
we're gonna have just a Cape Cod berm, and then the sidewalks where.
Well, there I gotta ask, what is the highway, well, the highway superintendent's not involved in this, is he? That's right, this is private.
Make a motion.
I was going to say, I can't remember if I made a motion, but I
No,
don't
you
think I
didn't.
did.
Not yet.
Motion to approve the waiver.
Seconded.
Can you start the vote on that side this time, just once in a while, to break it up?
We're almost done.
I guess you guys gotta, whoever buys has gotta live with it, so I'll say yes. I don't think it's the best idea, but
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
unanimous.
Unanimous?
yeah.
Okay, next, section 9.10, sidewalks, subsection A, a waiver to allow sidewalks on one side of Wall Street, and a waiver of all sidewalks on Park Avenue is requested. waiver to eliminate 5-foot grass strip between the berm and the sidewalk.
Make a motion to approve the waiver.
Seconded.
Discussion, or?
No, yes.
Yes?
I think I
Chris?
understand what you're saying.
Yes, Burke, yes, Russ, yes. Unanimous?
Okay, last waiver is Article 18.17 phasing. A waiver from the Article 16 subdivision phasing is requested. So under 18.17, you have the ability to waive, I think, the phasing requirement that's within the subdivision regulations. So it's a waiver from the Article 16 subdivision phasing is requested.
Which, in that article is what, the number of units?
How many units you could develop in a given year?
You want to waive from the 10 per year, correct?
Is it 10 or 20?
I mean, I think that phasing thing is, the economy's the phasing.
I agree, the economy will do it for
That shouldn't be
you.
in there. That's,
Yeah.
I make a motion, we approve the waiver.
Seconded.
Yes.
yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, unanimous.
I mean, I don't know if you remember.
Okay,
Bob,
we're
they
done
did
with
a-
waivers?
I believe so.
Okay.
They did a phasing law in Bridgewater, and like 1,500 house lots got submitted just to beat the phasing.
Well, we had the same thing here.
Yeah, and Paul Sullivan said it didn't pass, so he said, I'll give you all your money back if you take them back.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
we just sent them money back.
Bob, do you have anything you want to add? Okay. Anybody want to be heard in the public? Last chance to speak.
Drew Napick, Church Street. Just had a few questions. The access road coming off of Church Street, did I hear you correctly, sir? There's gonna be utilities running down that, or under that access road?
There are utilities, yes.
Okay. And so it's my understanding that utilities can be within the 75-foot buffer required by the bylaw, is that correct?
Utilities, can you?
Okay. Are utilities allowed within, if the buffer is reduced to 25 feet, as within the bylaws, are the utilities allowed within the 25-foot buffer?
Yeah. Utilities, when this bylaw was first done,
Okay.
there was,
Right, but those utilities
it was
are...
done because of Berry Hill was what triggered it, and utilities crossed from Berry Hill across the highways. They had to cross the buffer zone to get out to, like, meet water or meet sewer.
And all those utilities are underground,
Yeah.
as you said. So,
What crosses through that, out to Church Street?
Water and electric communication lines.
They all, the water loops out to Church.
so is that road, are you saying that road's necessary for the maintenance of the utilities?
No.
Or, okay, so is there a path that has to be maintained above underground utilities?
That would be, generally, the utility easement would go to, in that case, the water department
Okay.
and sewer department, so that would be up to them for maintenance.
Okay, I'm just,
Whether you need a road or not, they're calling the road an emergency access road, they're not calling it anything to do with utilities.
right, well, I mean, I'm trying to clarify because I did measure on the blueprints and that road is 15 feet or less from my neighbor's property line. So we still have that issue with the buffer. I mean, my neighbor and I were out there with a tape, and, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to read blueprints.
Well, I'm gonna
and
have some
scales.
discussion on that.
So that was my question there. Second question is, part of what was said when this thing was being hashed out at the beginning was that it was self-maintaining, that the town wouldn't have to pay any taxes to, that, you know, they're responsible for plowing their own roads, et cetera.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So, I'm just trying to understand how there's pieces of the road in the residential zone, but they're not considered part of the ARC, when they're maintained by the ARC.
Yeah, I'm gonna discuss that as well, because I think the ARC is it's supposed to be a self-contained community.
I think that was maybe a
It's
rephrasing
basically,
of what
you could look
you
at it as an
gentlemen
ARC
raised before.
is something that's completely encased as a community, not a subdivision with a bunch of lots, but something that's encased. And you take that encasement and it's allowed in business zones. You have to have that entire encasement into business zone. It'd be similar that like a Walmart's encased in a big building. You have to have that whole Walmart in a business zone. You can't have 50 feet of it into a residential zone. You
Okay.
can't have its parking into a residential zone. And this is no different. It's a business use. It's residential, but it's a business use. That's what it's considered. So a business
Okay.
use is allowed in business.
Next question, are there utilities, am I remembering that right? So are the utilities coming off Christopher's Way and then going 90 degrees and running, bordering Lot 34? Is that correct?
Yeah, he's asking you.
So what the gentleman is asking is, yes, there's a utility line, a sewer, sanitary sewer line that'll come and tie into Christopher's Way through an easement through the adjacent property and into the cul-de-sac at the end of Wall Street. So yes, there will be a utility line.
All right, so that's running not on Lot 34 or where Lot 34 was placed, however that works out, but it's running beside? I was looking at.
Perhaps you can go to the big one, yeah.
Another, yeah.
I have a big one here somewhere too.
I don't know if you can show me something that has where the brush exists now, the brush and the trees.
Well, you asked about the easement. The easement's on Lot 34, then it comes across, down, and over here.
Okay, yes, sir. So there's a piece coming across Lot 34 that comes down the majority of the length of the lot. Okay, so that would obviously require clearing to put the underground utilities in from that side. But other than that easement across 34, there's still supposed to be no clearing right now on the lots that are in the Res A. Am I understanding that right? In other words, the lot 34, 35.
So, to answer the gentleman's question,
Excuse me,
again,
33, 34, yeah.
so this is the area in question. The 4 lots that I mentioned earlier that would not be buildable, 33 to 36. You'll see a proposed tree line on the drawings here and here, which indicates no clearing of these lots in these areas, other than for the grading associated with the road and for the utility line here. So
Right, so it indicates
it's very
cleared
clear.
brush just where the utility.
Just where the utility line is going,
Utilities are
correct.
from,
So
okay.
that's very clear on the plan.
So,
Um,
I have a question, though, unrelated to your question.
Sure.
You keep talking about 33 through 36. Now, I've got this plan here, and maybe because I can't see that far away, this is the plan you submitted to the zoning board of appeals. And that residential line goes through 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, and a piece of 38. And it's a piece, and 39, 40, and 41, and a piece of 42. And you keep talking about only 33 through 36. Do I have the wrong plan?
No, you have the right, you have the right plan.
Well, then, I mean, I see the line going right through the house.
No,
on
the
this plan.
dwelling units for those as shown on the plans,
This new
dated
plan
July
doesn't-
29th, we've moved the houses out of the residential zone. So
this-
on the plans before you this evening, they are outside the residential zone.
I think the issue that I had right from the start was the rezoning. And a couple of years ago, I said, before this gets started, I said, you're gonna have to rezone it. And it fell on deaf ears. Then finally, you guys obviously acknowledged that you agreed with me because you went for a rezoning. And we voted on it, and we all endorsed it, and it, unfortunately, it failed at town meeting. So, to me, an ARC is a self-contained, encased use, and you can't have that use overlap into a different district. It's not a for or against the project, it's a matter of law to me. And that would be the equivalent of letting any business use overlap. And by that logic, we have something coming in front of us at our next meeting, which is a Cumberland Farms. And so I guess they don't need a rezoning either, because they failed their rezoning, so now you can have all their stuff go into the residential zone, because they're not gonna put their building there. But that's, in the Peatnik letter, that's if you read it, it would, one, allow roads to go out into residential, come back into business, so you could access Walmart's, gas station, anything through a residential neighborhood, is what this says, because you're going out into a residential. And also, the Cumberlands that's coming in, by this logic, you could, as long as you kept your building on the business zone, you can use that residential land for business use. And this is an adult retirement community, it's residential in a way, but as zoning puts it, it's a business use. It's allowed use in business, not allowed in residential. And that's the way the law is. So, I mean, I see a zone line there, and I see that it says you can't put an ARC in that zone, and if the road, the lots, the buffer, all that is part of the ARC. So you can't say, well, you know, so basically this is the way I interpret the law, and I can show you what, if you read the section that we just totally blew off when you were going section to section, you ignored.
I ignored because I can't figure out what it is.
You ignored 18D.
D?
11D.
11?
Screening.
11D?
We will get to the paragraph that you jumped over and cruised past it. So if you take, if the way I read that, and right or wrong, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just saying that's what the written law is. It shows, it says an adult retirement community's gotta be in business zone. So, in other words, regardless of where lot lines are, it has to be in business zone. If you own father that's not in business zone, that's just tough, you own father. So here's the business line, business residential. So your ARC can only be from here to 44, which would mean none of this stuff can be in here. Then it says you need a 75-foot buffer along the entire perimeter. So there's your 75-foot buffer along the entire perimeter. I mean, it says the planning board, and the 75-foot buffer has to be adjacent to anything zoned residential, which is the residential zone line, or anything with a residential use, which is all these pieces. It says that the planning board can reduce it, but not in any of these residential cases. It says in the residential case, and you read it, 18D, it says it has to be 75 feet in width against residential or residential zone. And this is how it should have came in as designed, on the original design. That's why I say get the zoning changed so we don't deal with this and get the, you know, potential buffer reduction. But so this is what the law says. That's how it starts. And it says it has to be 75 in residential. In all other cases, the planning board can bring it down. So basically, from this point all the way back to around this point, that has to be 75. The rest of it, we have some flexibility.
Well, you say it has to be 75. Didn't they get a variance?
They got a variance to reduce it like way out here, and it's not even in the zone. So I think that variance is useless as, you know, the thing's on a pole. But so I don't see that variance has any merit.
Okay.
And also, it says that, it also goes on to say, you can only put utilities or your primary road through this buffer strip. In this case, there's the primary road, that's fine. Then they said there's water utility, that's fine. But it doesn't say you can do an access road. So basically, it gives you two allowed uses. So it allows you to put a utility through and allows you to put your primary road, but your primary road can't actually be in the 75 because it has to be more than 75 feet from residential used land to residential zone land. So your primary road can never be here. It would have to be somewhere along this strip, you know?
Okay.
It can't come off, but that's what the law, the way I read it. I don't see how you can read it any other way, but it's pretty much, I mean, read D, and that's the way I read it.
Okay.
So, to me, the community has to be from this line up. Because you can't like put a store that overlaps the zone line, a business use, you can't put a car.
But you see, you're saying business use. This is a type of residential use that has to be built in a business area.
Right. So the entire community, here's your ARC community, this square. This square has to be up in here. It can't go like this or like that. And it's an adult retirement community, it's one entity. And you're overflowing into the other zone. That's, I pointed out years ago, and maybe if it wasn't the 138 and all that other stuff going to town meeting, if it went a couple of years ago when I pointed out, it probably just would have been approved and gone through quickly. But the fact is it didn't. And the fact it says that we cannot approve it if it doesn't comply to zoning. We can't. Our hands are tied. It's the same as zoning not being able to do a use variance when they've done it anyway, but they don't have the power to.
Okay.
And that's my thoughts. I mean, it's not a for or against thing, it's just that this is what it says.
Okay. Attorney Prophet, you want to say something?
Sure, I just want to jump in here because I want to address this one specific issue while we're at it, and
Yep.
I don't want to cut off Mr. Nappy. You know, I obviously disagree with Mr. Gallagher's interpretation of the bylaw. There's nothing that says that the community has to be completely within the industrial business. And actually, the part that he's reading, and it keeps kind of misstating, is the screening shall be 75 feet in width to all abutting properties, not to a residential line, but to all abutting properties that are either zoned residential or currently have residential use. It's not to the residential line that may run through the property, but it's to the abutting properties. Now, the purpose of this whole screening issue was, okay, I have a house over here in a residential district. I put an ARC over here in the business district. We want to keep some distance between the houses in the ARC and the houses in the residential district. We will never, ever, ever have that issue. The intent of the bylaw will never, ever be affected because the whole area that we're talking about, this existing open space, is subject to a no building restriction. So the purpose was to keep this house 75 feet from this house over here. There'll never be a house here. It can't. It's a recorded restriction done well before that we provided to you. So the intent of the bylaw is never going to be affected. Additionally, it says from the 75-foot zone, which the ZBA interpreted in both open and executive session, goes from the abutting properties. So this is the abutting property. The screening zone, which I just directly read from the bylaw, says from the abutting residential property. So it's not from the residential line, it's from the residential property. Additionally, we've already had discussions with the zoning enforcement officer that says it has been a standard practice in Raynham that if you have one property that's zoned in two different areas, you use the entire property for the purposes of zoning, as long as the use is actually in the permitted use. That's why when we went to the ZBA, we said, all of the buildings, all of the use, all of the driveways are going to be in the business zone. And anything that was outside of that was going to be outside the business zone, that was going to be in the residential, will not be built upon. None of the houses will be built upon. And the ZBA, again, discussed that both in open and in executive session, and even put it in here that none of the construction of the homes were going to be in the business, but it's in the residential, it's all going to be in the business. So the actual language is the screening 75 feet in width to all abutting properties, which is the exact language that the ZBA used when it issued its variance. That's why it did issue its variance. And with regards to the street, streets go from residential to business zones all over town. The town council basically said in his letter, he reads nothing in this bylaw and nothing in any of the bylaw, any other part of the bylaw that prevents a street going from one to the other. Now, I want to address Mr. Texar's issue with self-contained. This is self-contained. There will be no construction or building of homes outside of that. This is all contained. Now, this all becomes open space. Just because it's residential, it's still open space and it's still part of the the ARC, but it's open space, so it is all contained. It's not like that is used for some other purpose. So
Would you
with
agree to
regard
make
to
them
the
all
self,
Would you agree to make them part of the open space and remain unbuildable in perpetuity?
well, we wouldn't, I couldn't agree to it in perpetuity because zoning laws change all the time.
But either way, I don't agree with you. I read it different. I know you're telling me the intent of the bylaw. I was here in 2003 and 2004 when we wrote it. We'll probably maybe ride your bicycle at that point. So I don't, but I don't think, you weren't here to have knowledge of the intent.
But, Mr. McGallagher, I went back and I read everything. I didn't see that you were on the board at the time the zoning bylaw was first
I wasn't on the board,
introduced.
but I played a very huge role in that bylaw. Ed could tell you that, Bert could tell you that.
But again,
I got it shot down once or twice at town meeting.
you've
and
said that you've written it, but you weren't on the board, so.
Yeah, but I wrote it with the board.
And I understand
Okay,
that,
well-
in the way that this is written is what I have to deal with.
Right.
This is, the way that it's written is the way I have to interpret it and apply it.
Well, no,
And
you're doing
everything
your
that
job. You're
we've
supposed to
applied
interpret it the best way you can for your
fits
customer, and I'm
this-
interpreting it the way
fits this.
I believe it's to be interpreted.
But again, the purpose of a special permit, and you can read it in there, is to protect
Well, forgetting the purpose.
the residents and everything of Raynham.
Do you agree that an ARC is only allowed in a business and industrial zone?
Personally, no, but
You don't agree with that?
I've taken away that argument. I mean, if you read the ARC,
Well, no, you're gonna read that paragraph he screwed up and left in about the residential
but
density.
you keep
That's what
telling
you're gonna read, and
me
that's
he
not.
screwed up and left this in about residential, but.
Yeah, but that was just a
it's all I
density
can go by.
calculation. That was a density calculation, we discussed it, he left that in there when it got pulled out of residential at town meeting. That's for density in a residential, but it's not allowed in a residential. I go by the allowed uses. You're choosing not to go by it.
No.
And you guys also, like with town council, say if it isn't in the bylaw, then it must be okay. Well, it doesn't say you can't do strip joints in residential, but I think a lot of people get ticked off if you tried to pull it in.
No,
you
I'm
probably
pretty sure
wouldn't
it
get
does say you
approved.
can't do strip
It
joints
says
in
exactly
residential.
what you're allowed to do, and you're not allowed to do an ARC. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that's the way I read the bylaw, and it says that I can't approve this thing unless it meets the regs. And 2 years ago, that's why I said for the zoning change. And
But-
unfortunately, it waited too long, and it ended up going in, and all the 138 stuff was going on, everything else was still on.
The issue
It
you
got shut
have has been dealt with by the ZBA. Who are the people that enforce and interpret the bylaws? And this is a zoning bylaw.
down. Yeah, but we're
So
a
I-
special permit and granting authority, and I'm sitting here to interpret the bylaw as well.
Correct, but the ZBA is the authority that regulates and interprets the zoning bylaws. The special granting authority says, is this the bylaw? Oh, ZBA, you're the one that is in charge of the bylaw, you granted the variance, then that is becomes part of this bylaw and what I should be taking
No,
into
I firmly
consideration.
believe I'm correct
Not
in my
only that, it's the
interpretation.
intent,
I'm not gonna
literally.
change my mind.
Okay, this is an issue that's going
It's
nowhere.
not-
You guys are just going back
I
and
brought this
forth.
up 2 years ago.
Sure.
You guys agreed, and you went for the zoning change, so you obviously agreed with me. And so, and then Bob, in his letter to the ZBA, he agreed with me. And if it passed, that would've been great, but it didn't. And so, that, you guys all agreed, because we all thought it was just gonna fly right through, and didn't think there'd be opposition, but there was.
We didn't agree, but we conceded to go in that way.
Okay, going to have you finish up?
Still Drew Napick from Church Street. So I think, I don't know if I got an answer, but there's no clearing on the lots or the non-lots, I'm not sure what they are, but the stuff that's in Res A, is there any clearing allowed on that right now? And I'm gonna follow up by asking what's defined as clearing, because I know that seems like splitting hairs, but trees, like screening vegetation.
I presume
like,
they can
I
be
think that's
cleared to
relevant.
put in the utilities, and then they have to put up the,
Well, I mean, excuse me, sir, that's why I asked about the utilities first, is because the utility's running down the side of that lot, but I mean, I'm asking because those 33 and 34 are directly behind my neighbor's house, and they want to know if, he might be home from work by now, but they want to know if that's going to be cleared or not. And if there's not gonna be houses there, at least right now with the zoning the way it is, then I wanna know is it just gonna be cleared where the utilities are going down the side of lot 34? Or is there clearing allowed on the lots that aren't being built on right now? I'm trying to find out if this is gonna be in writing, because I don't want it to become an issue later if my neighbor looks out his back window and sees machines ripping down trees.
Are you getting to the point where there's already been a lot of clearing going on out there?
He's
Because
seen
I've had a few
machines
people call
behind
me.
his house,
Doesn't
but I'm
matter.
trying to see if this is
Doesn't
ripping
matter.
vegetation or full-blown trees. I'm trying to find out where the guideline is there.
Go ahead.
Okay, the plan has a proposed tree line. The tree line is depicted on the plans. As I pointed out a few minutes ago, it's limited to the utility lines and the grading adjacent to the roadway. That's the extent of the clearing in those areas.
Okay, so if my neighbor has, and again, I'm sorry to split hairs, but I want to know what is defined as clearing, because if my neighbor is looking out his back window and seeing machines within, yards of his property line ripping stuff out, then what is his recourse if this stuff is being cleared? And I'm sorry, but what defines cleared? Is that taking full-blown trees down, or is that ripping out vegetation that, completely, takes away with the underbrush around here, you take away privacy and visual screening? So I'm trying to find that out
You have
in this
a
place.
explanation you'd like to give, Bob?
Not that he'd like to give, but he has an explanation.
As far as clearing goes, unless there's a conditional approval and you put some kind of condition on how he's gonna handle those lots and what he's gonna do to those lots, unless there's a conservation issue, he can clear anything he wants.
As long as he leaves the buffer that is required. Well, I won't say leave.
Well,
He has to
this-
if he clears everything, he has the right to do that, but then he has to put a buffer back in.
If this plan is not approved, there is no buffer. He can clear as much as he wants, as long as he's not within the conservation's
Well,
restrictions.
that's true.
So neighbor could go home tomorrow, Drew, and you could have all the trees gone. As long as conservation doesn't have a problem with it, you have no control.
Yeah.
That's
That's what I thought the case was.
So if the plan does go through, then the visual screening as required by bylaw is subject to your department then? Okay. I want to clarify, because I'm trying to absorb everything tonight. Did I hear you say that there's something in there in writing for construction vehicles only coming off 44 during construction?
Yeah, except for
Except
the
if the
actual
access road goes in
construction of the
itself.
access road.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, just wanted to reinforce half my neighbors, the screening, the visual screening, which is in the bylaws, but, whether it's utilities, access road, whatever goes in there, just so they're, the spirit of, what, Mr. Prophet said with, the buffer is visual screening and privacy for the abutting property, so just wanted to reinforce that, and
Mhm.
thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. Yes?
We keep talking about neighbors, but no other neighbors show up.
I'm here. Excuse me, sir, as I just said, my neighbor may be home from work right now.
Again,
To at work second shift.
I understand that, but this.
Well, I don't care if the neighbor's here or not. The law
The
is
the
the
screening
law.
along the back access road is gonna stay the way it is. There's natural screening right there, and the elevation of that access road is like 20 feet lower, so it's gonna stay the way it is. There's trees there, it's gonna stay the way it is. So if that addresses any issues, then I hope that addresses whatever issue that was.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Matthew Andrade. I live at 50 Christopher's Way. I'm the owner there. And the whole buffer of the zone that you talk about going along the field, right now it's currently occupied by cows and goats. So, I look out there daily, and I would much rather prefer looking at them and a few nicely constructed houses than anything else. I don't oppose the plan at all. And I'm a tax-paying citizen inside of the town, and I don't see any problem with it.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, everyone has said enough? Have I missed anything? Everybody had their say?
I'd just like to add one other thing, you know.
Is there any way to readdress the no construction on the access road? Can we put a time limit from the construction through the access road while it's being built from 8 to 5 or something like that? I'm trying to work with you and give a limit, but that is the primary access road for the construction and construction vehicles.
Why?
That's the primary way to get in. That's the most efficient way to get in. That's the best way for us to bring construction and construction vehicles. And if we do it within normal working hours, we have no problem with that. And we don't want to disrupt anybody's sleep or anything like that, so we'll do it from 8 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever you'd like. It's not going to be daily in and out with trucks, but I would just ask that the board reconsider that condition.
We already voted on it, but I don't mind reconsidering. I make a motion that we remove the condition and we allow construction trucks to go on Church Street as their main means of access. Do I get a second?
Excuse me, sir, am I allowed to respond to that?
No, not yet. Do I have a second?
Second, but are we
Okay.
putting a time limit?
Well,
No, absolutely not.
John,
Don't you have to open it for discussion first?
okay, it's open for discussion.
Okay, now he can talk, all right?
No.
I get to talk first?
Yes.
Okay. Geez, you always me first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, let me think on it.
We already voted on it, and
We're reconsidering.
what is this, a
The
motion to
motion,
reconsider?
the motion was to allow the trucks to use Church Street. Yes or no?
No.
John?
No.
No.
And then no.
What'd you say? I
No.
didn't hear you. What'd you say? I didn't hear what
It was
Russ
a
said.
unanimous no.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
so the vote stood.
So it's good.
So, just to clarify, Drew Knapping, Church Street, so the construction vehicles will not be coming down Church Street?
Except for
Except
the
for the-
construction
if
of
there's
the
access
actual
utilities,
access
yes.
road and the
Okay.
utilities run
And that is
through
in
it.
writing in the plan or guidelines for this?
It's in our decision.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Everybody's done? Have I missed anything?
No, may I just make one other comment, and I'll
Sure.
change hats for a minute? I happen to be the chairman of the Council on Aging in town, chairman of the Board of Directors. And I'll give you a little stat. Based on the 2010 census, 20%, over 20% of the population of Raynham are senior citizens over the age of 55. I think I mentioned this before. So overall, I think the project is a good idea. I think we need something like this because we're a town of senior citizens. I'm not comfortable with this, and I've heard all the arguments and so forth, and I'll tell you, and I've said it before, I'm not an expert on this. These guys are all professionals in this field. I'm just a guy that I think looks out for the citizen and what's right and what's wrong. And I'm not comfortable with those two things that I told you about, and I have a problem with that. Then I guess I just want to go on the record and tell you that. But I want you to understand, I think overall this project is a good thing, and as I said, when I put the hat on as a chairman of the Council on Aging, boy, we need it. We need senior housing in town, because I'm sure when we do the next census next year, you're going to see that 20% go up. I know some of the senior citizens passed, but there are more of them accumulating every single year, I can assure you. So this is a good thing, but I can't tolerate those two items. I just can't. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I close the hearing. Is there anything else that any members of the board want to say?
Well, again, it says planning board may grant special permit if it complies to all zoning bylaws and planning board rules and regs. I think we voted on the waivers. Did we vote on the common driveway?
I didn't know there was anything to vote on common driveway.
Common driveway has to be approved by both the planning board and the fire department. So the fire department sent their letter.
Fire department approved it, okay.
And so we have to decide if we're going to approve it.
You'd approve it if you approve the plan, it'd be automatic approval if you approve the plan.
Well, we could do it in a motion, whether we approve it, because it could be significant to what happens. So
Yeah, but if you take it at the plan level, because if you, if you don't approve that, then you can't approve the plan. So I would just take it at the plan level. That's my opinion on it, for whatever it's worth.
I think we should, since it's in the bylaw.
All right.
Okay.
Vote on the common
Do we
driveway.
find that streets and common driveways within the development provide adequate access for the fire department and other emergency vehicles?
We voted, had 2 noes and 2 yeses, and that was because of the common driveway, I believe. So we
Okay.
basically think that should, well, at least I think it should be a road. So that's why I think we should vote on whether or not to accept that as a common driveway.
Does the board find that the streets and common driveways within the development provide adequate access for the fire department and other emergency vehicles? John?
No.
Chris?
No.
Bert? Yes. Russ?
Yes.
Yes.
The fire department says so.
Okay. Anything else?
I'd make a motion that we don't accept that driveway that's located on lots 1 to 5 as a, we don't approve it as a common.
Hold on, Chris.
No.
Yeah, you want to
John,
change
I
it.
can't hear Chris because she's shut down the papers.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'd make a motion that we don't
Hold on,
approve
Chris.
it.
Just in case. Okay,
Go ahead.
great.
That we don't approve that as a common drive. So if that
Well, I
is-
don't think procedurally you're doing it right.
Well, I think I can make a motion, can I?
Well, I don't, wouldn't it be better that we vote on the special permit, and if the special
Well,
permit
I'd
is
rather
denied?
I'd rather vote on the driveway
But you-
first,
you-
because it says right in the regs that
If you-
planning board and
If you
fire-
deny the special permit, you have to give reasons for the denial.
Well, one of the reasons could be we already voted and don't agree with the driveway.
Well, what I'm saying is, wouldn't it make more sense to take a vote on the special permit, and if it's denied, then come up with the reasons for the denial?
Okay?
You agree with me procedurally?
Yep.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the special permit. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the special permit? John?
No.
Chris?
No.
No. Burke, yes.
Yes.
Russ, yes. All right, you needed 4 votes, we only got 2, so it is denied.
So
Now we need reasons for why we denied it.
my reason, and if anyone wants to agree with me, well, me and John voted no, so I guess we have to have reasons that we agree with. Do you agree that we don't accept
I have
the driveway as a common drive?
I stated my 2 reasons, 2 problems that I had with it right at the beginning of the meeting. The common drive, I don't believe is a common driveway, because it becomes a common driveway for the entire development. Because you can't get to that community building unless you go across the property of those 4 or 5 houses there. I don't agree with that. I mean, I wouldn't want somebody going across my driveway to get to the building.
Okay.
That's one, and the other one is, I don't see it as self-contained. Those are my reasons.
So you feel that the common driveway on the plan is more than a common driveway?
I believe it's a road.
It is a road, and therefore should not be included in the lot size, and what else?
Yeah, basically, anything on the other, I think that should be a road with a right-of-way, and anything on the other side cannot be used as lot area.
Okay.
And to take it a step further, both lots 1 and 2 are within the first 200 feet of the Boulevard Road, measured from the property line, which is where you would start measuring your road. So lots 1 and 2 also do not comply to zoning, because you can't access them through their frontage.
Okay.
The screening, no one ever requested a reduction in the screening. So the way I read it, there's a 75-foot screening around the entire perimeter. Even though the plan showed reductions where they saw fit, nobody ever requested a reduction.
Okay.
So it doesn't provide the proper screening along the perimeter. I don't think, as John said, it's self-contained unit entirely in the business district. So I believe it's allowed in a business district, an industrial district, and not a residential district. Regardless of what visual relief you get, the zoning line is there. So I think the ARC has to be thought of as one entity, an adult retirement community, where the entire retirement community has to be located in a business zone,
So
and clearly it's not.
A portion of the development is in an inappropriate zone,
Yes,
being a residential A zone,
yes.
and that this is not allowed in a residential A zone.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then also, the only allowed uses in the screening zone are primary roadway and utility easements. Emergency access is neither one of them, so it's not an allowed use.
Okay?
Even though the zoning board granted it as per section 2.3, the ZBA can't grant a use variance.
All right, so you think that the zoning board overstepped its allowed,
Yes.
whatever?
And possibly misunderstood what they were doing. And also, I saw in general, in section 6.1, general regulations in zoning,
Mm-hmm.
it says basically that no land or part thereof can be used for anything other than what is allowed in the district. So in other words, you can't use any of that residential for an
Okay.
ARC because it's not allowed in that district. Now it's in section 6.1 of the general.
Okay,
Of the
so
zoning
we've already
bylaw.
talked about that, but we want to add to that statement that was made before, we want to specifically refer to our zoning bylaw 6.1.
Well, 6.1 says you can't use like residential land for business use. That's basically what it says. You can only use the land for what it's zoned for. And we might want to add, according to section 5, permitted uses, according to section 4, residential A district, an ARC is not listed as an allowed use.
Okay?
Whereas in section 4.2, permitted uses, it is allowed in a business district.
Okay?
And that's all. I mean, the way I'm reading it, we can't approve it if it doesn't meet zoning. And
Well, again,
I
because-
have too many questions on it and don't think it complies.
Yep.
Maybe it can be explained to me different, or some other outside attorney other than our town council or the proponent's council could enlighten me to why the law is written the way it is, and if, you can do a use that's not allowed in a zone, and I don't think you can.
That's fine.
I mean, I wish the zoning bylaw, the zoning change kind of went through, would have made life a lot easier.
Okay? Any other comments? Anything you want to add to that certificate of action?
No, I believe that's it. And some waivers weren't granted, so the plan doesn't conform to the subdivision rules and regulations
Yep,
due
that's
to
a good-
failure
that's a
of
good one.
getting
That's important.
waivers granted.
Yep.
I guess that's about it.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add?
I mean, we have 14 days, so we could still add if we thought of anything. It doesn't have to all come here.
Yeah. But anything you'd like to add? Okay, we're done then, huh?
Yep.
All right. Adjourned.